Yeah, I'm gonna find that 2 weeks. But you know what? There's lots of good things too. There's
Oh,
lots
no,
of really
I
good
don't
things.
If not all of the board members are here, and hopeful Olivia will join. And thank you to all of you who have put your cameras on. I know that that's helpful with our live stream for people to see who's talking and identify who's talking. So if you're able to do that, that is wonderful.
Oh, Barbara looks like she just went for a run.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Good, Chuck. How you doing?
I'm well. I'm grateful to be here. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Yes.
Hi, Frank. How are you?
Hi.
All right, it is 7 o'clock. So I am presuming that we are streaming live on CCTV. I am Jennifer Patterson. I'm president of the Concord School Board, and I am calling this meeting to order. And I must make my emergency meeting statement. Gotten more efficient over time, so please bear with me. As president of Concord School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04, the Concord School Board is authorized to meet electronically. The business we intend to conduct today is necessary due to the need to continue moving forward with the regular monthly meeting of the board. This will include taking public comment, as noted on the agenda that on our website. We'll do this by unmuting phone lines one by one during the public comment period. It would be helpful for the comment to indicate their names in the comment function of Microsoft Teams. That will enable us to call on you more easily. But we will do all of the names and phone numbers to make sure we capture everyone who wishes to comment. In accordance with district policy number 136, comments are limited to 5 minutes per person to allow all interested parties to comment. And we also encourage the submission of comments via email, concordinfo@sau8.org. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen closely to this meeting. However, in accordance with the governor's emergency order, we're providing public access by telephone and other electronic. Specifically, we're using Microsoft Teams for this meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously through them, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen, and if necessary, participate in the meeting. They can dial 95391-1169 with a conference ID of 610-970-401#. They can also reach it by clicking on the link on the SAU8 website. This meeting is also broadcasted contemporaneously on CCTV's education channel, which is Comcast Channel 6, or YouTube TV, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the CCTV's website. We did give public notice of the necessary information accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Microsoft Teams or telephonically. This information was posted on the district's website at sau8.org more than 24 hours prior to the meeting, and it's highlighted on the top of our website. If any member of the public has processing the meeting while it's going on, they should call 603-513-9008. Event that the public is not able to access the meeting and we can't resolve access problems, we will adjourn and reschedule the meeting. So now I will take a roll call and determine what board members are participating. All board members will be participating remotely, which means that any votes that are taken during this meeting, roll call vote. So as I go through your names, members, please also state whether anyone is in the room with you, which is required under the right to know law. And then in addition, as we go through the meeting, if you could mute your microphone when not speaking and wait to be recognized. We have heard that sometimes for folks who are watching on TV, it's difficult to tell who is speaking. So if you could wait to be recognized, that would be very helpful, or identify yourself. Ms. Cannon, are you present?
Sorry, Jen, did you
Hello.
call me? Because I dropped out.
I did. I just called you.
Okay. Well, I am here. I'm alone and have intermittent service. So if it continues to be a problem, I'll call in.
Okay, great. Thank you. And good luck with the wireless. Mr. Croto, are you present?
I am here and I am alone.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Croto. Excuse me, Mr. Crush, are you present?
I am present and I'm alone.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Crush. Ms. Higgins, are you present?
I am here. I'm on my porch and people wander by, but I'm basically alone.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Mr. Parker, are you present?
I'm here and I'm by myself.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Poinier, are you present?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Poinier. Mr. Richards, are you present?
I am here. I can hear everyone and I am alone, although my wife Beth may pass through at one point or another.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Richards. Ms. Smith, are you present?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Smith. And I'm Jennifer Patterson. I am present. I am alone in the room. And I can see and hear everybody. So excellent. So Dr. Bass, let me just turn to you to identify the district staff who are participating in this meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not certain of everybody because I can't see all the names in front of me, but I'll go through the litany and see if I missed anybody. So Donna Paley, our Assistant Superintendent, Jack Dunn, our Business Administrator, Larry Prince, our Director of Human Resources. I have a number of folks from the high school. I believe Kathleen Chalauskas is here. Jim Corkum is here, Assistant Principal. Tom Crumrine, Assistant Principal. Mike Reardon, Principal. I also believe Matt Cashman is here, Director of Facilities. And I don't know if I missed anybody. Please speak up if I did.
Hi, it's Chris Gallo from Krista McAuliffe.
Thank you, Chris.
And Carol McCarthy from Krista McAuliffe.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Hi, Dr. Anderson.
Couldn't hear that last one.
Karen Fisher Anderson.
Oh, Karen, thank you. Yes. Karen, our new addition, who is our Compliance Title IX supervisor and has already done a superb job. She's only been on with us for the last month or so, but already her presence is being felt.
Thank you, sir.
I don't see Larry. Broken ground.
Susan Losey. Hi, Susan. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Dr.
Concord High School. Graham Crowther, Concord High School.
Oh, I forgot about Graham. Yes, Graham Crowther's here. Frank Harrison might also be here. And Katie McDonough is also a teacher at the middle school and high school, also present, I believe. They're part of a committee that will be speaking later during my remarks.
Pam McLeod is here.
Pam, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Bass. Michelle Vance from Beaver Meadow School is here.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for all of the staff and administrators who are participating. And I also want to recognize our student representatives. Alice Richards, I know, is here. And is Gavin Brown on? I didn't see your name, Gavin, but are you here?
He won't be here today. 30 is the senior class awards, academic awards, so he won't be able to attend.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Alice, for being here. And yeah. I'm sorry that Kevin won't be able to be here. And then we also have our nominee for interim superintendent, Kathleen Murphy, and thank you, Kathleen, for being here. We can see you, but you cannot see us, apparently.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I know we have other members of the public, and when we get to the public comment period, we will recognize you. Great. So I think our next agenda item is approval of the agenda. I do not have any changes to the agenda. Are there any changes?
No, good by me.
So seeing none, is there a motion to? Yes, go ahead, Gina.
Can we hold on for a sec? I just got a text from a constituent saying we are not on CCTV yet.
No.
So that I'm double checking with that. Not channel 6. We are not on.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got the same text as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's see what Jack, maybe you could be in touch with Josh.
Yeah, I'm calling him right now.
On. So let's take a little recess and see if we can get to the bottom of this question.
Sorry, there's a lot of very important stuff to be discussed. I want to make sure that everybody who wants to be heard can see and be heard.
Yep, no, I completely agree. And I know that a meeting conflicted in a way that couldn't be broadcast. And so we waited and recessed it until we were able to be broadcast. So if we have to do that, we will do that. I do see Josh Hardy is signed in. Let's see. So says he is talking with Josh, who is checking to see what is happening and why it doesn't appear to be broadcasting.
Jenny, in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you to the administration for an excellent underclassmen achievement awards, and it was a great show. And I'd also like to congratulate all of the underclassmen that have joined us. Nice job, everyone.
Well, Jenny, I think couple of minutes and things like that. I mean, that's not a controversial issue.
Nope.
Yeah, okay, so let's move ahead, and then before we get into...
Actually, I don't think we can.
Yeah, I don't think I think it has to be, the whole meeting has to be available.
All right, okay, yeah.
Sorry, Frank.
It's all right.
Well, thank you, Gina, for being on top of our right to know guidance.
Well, thank you, New Hampshire School Board Association, for running that webinar.
So Jack has just informed us that the streaming from YouTube is working, and they're checking the crossover to channel 6. So to those who are watching on YouTube, I apologize that you're having to wait, but hopefully we'll be on channel 6 shortly.
So, Jen,
Yes.
a couple people have joined the meeting. Do we want to explain why nothing is currently happening periodically so that people who come in late know why there's nothing going on?
Sure. Do you want to explain it, Gina?
Oh, okay. So we are currently streaming on YouTube as well as our local CCTV Community Channel 6, but we are having an issue streaming on Channel 6. So we're trying to solve the technical difficulties so we can move forward with the meeting, particularly in light of the requirements set forth by the governor to hold public meetings. It's such that the community has to be able to be involved and see it and be able to call in and react to things real time. So we're kind of pausing, hoping that the technical issues will get solved.
I'm here. Sorry.
So, I just heard it is on. No, it was on. No, false alarm. On now. Yep, two different independents. It is on Channel 6 now.
Okay.
Oh,
good to
great.
go.
Okay, thank you so much. And so to those who were trying to watch on Channel 6, thank you. Know that you were not able to view our meeting. This is the monthly meeting of the Concord School Board. I did read the emergency meeting statement. I don't think I will repeat it, but a key piece of it, as Gina Cannon just pointed out, was that the public has to be able to observe us simultaneously, and therefore we paused the meeting while we were waiting for the issue of streaming on Channel 6 to get resolved. So all we had done was roll call of board members, and all of the board members are present, along with a number of administrators and staff members, and Kathleen Murphy, our interim superintendent nominee. And so we will proceed with the meeting. So the next agenda item is approval of the agenda. I don't believe there are any changes to the agenda, so I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I would make that motion.
Okay, so moved by Tom Crodo.
Barb Higgins seconds.
Seconded by Barb. And I will call the roll on approval of the agenda. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Ms. Cannon votes aye. Mr. Crodo.
Aye.
Mr. Crodo votes aye. Mr. Crush.
Aye.
Ms. Aye. Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Ms. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Parker votes aye. Ms. Poinier.
Aye.
Ms. Poinier votes aye. Mr. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Richards votes aye. Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Smith votes aye, and Ms. Patterson votes aye. So the agenda is approved. So the next item is approval of board minutes, and in our board packet, we had minutes from our May 4th monthly board meeting, our May 12th meeting, which pertained to our superintendent search, our May 18th meeting for scheduling, and our May 28th meeting last week with respect to our interim superintendent candidate. Are there any comments or changes by board members to any of them?
Ginny, it's Chuck. May I make just a quick comment?
Chuck, I can't really hear you.
Sherry
So you're welcome to make a comment. Let's get you a better audio.
Is now joining.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you a little better. It still sounds a little fuzzy. Give it a try.
Here.
Oh, that was better.
All right, how about this? Is that
I think
better?
that's better. Yep. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, all I wanted, I just briefly wanted for the public and public record, I've not been able to be at some meetings of recently due to professions. I run a senior healthcare community in Massachusetts, and with the COVID-19 global pandemic, that has certainly required a lot. And I want to thank the board members for being so understanding and so supportive, and also just let the public know kind of why I've not been there. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Chuck, and thank you for all of your efforts. And we know it is incredibly difficult for you to devote time to the board right now, and we appreciate what you have been able to give us and the work that you're doing for the larger community.
Thank you.
Let's see what's going on.
Are there any other comments or corrections to the minutes of the meetings? in May. So seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes in the board packet.
So moved by Barb Higgins.
Thank you, Barb. So moved by Barb. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Jenny. Jim
So
Richards.
moved by Barb, seconded by Jim. And I will call the roll on approval of Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Ms. Cannon votes aye. Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Croto votes aye. Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Mr. Crush votes aye. Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Parker votes aye. Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier votes aye. Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Mr. Richards votes aye. Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Smith votes aye, and Ms. Patterson votes aye. So those minutes are approved. So next, I will recognize Dr. Bass for reports. And I think our first reports actually come from our student representative, Alice Richards. And I just wanted, before you start, to say thank you so much to you and to Gavin Brown, who is our other student representative. The two of you have done an absolutely fantastic job this year. You have added so much to our board process, particularly around the policy development, but also in your reports of what's happening and, you know, your diligence under all of the circumstances, which have been very challenging. So I just wanted to say thank you, Gavin, who unfortunately couldn't be here.
Yeah, thank you. We really enjoyed it working alongside all of you. It's been really great. So good evening, members of the board. With just 3 official days left until the 2019-2020 school year ends for Concord students, Gavin and I wanted to take this meeting to reflect back on the year, speak to CHS's final events, and look towards next year. Beginning Thursday, there were pickup and drop-off stations set up at CHS. Last week, seniors were able to drop off necessary textbooks and Chromebooks, go into school 5 at a time to get everything needed from their lockers, and pick up various certificates, graduation materials, etc. Each class is assigned a day this week, so underclassmen are able to go. Today are the upper and lower academic awards, where students are recognized for their academic achievements in specific classes and for overall achievement. Typically, this happens at the Concord City Auditorium, but this year it's cast on TV and YouTube. Airing at 7:30 are our senior class awards, which is why Gavin, our senior student representative of the school board, is not. For the last main event of the school year, we have graduation this month at Memorial Field. To keep social distance guidelines followed and in place, the ceremony has been divided up by commons. There will be less students at each, allowing for more space between students and attending families. We would like to extend congratulations to all seniors graduating on the 13th, as well as to our CRTC graduates who graduated the past weekend. So throughout the school year, Gavin and I have really enjoyed the opportunity given to us with this position, student voice into discussion. Many students began this year feeling unsure. Many weren't sure of where a position was in the decision making, who we could talk to and trust, and what we had to say. Through added resources and active conversations at our school, along with directly using student opinion to shape important district policies, there's a depth shift in not only our school's atmosphere, but also in the district culture. Obviously, the growth is not over. There's always room to continue improving in this area, and that is something I look really forward to doing next year. We really appreciate the support we have gotten from the school board and from administration this year in helping to facilitate this work. You all have been so responsive to the results and in helping to make beneficial choices based on them. But most importantly, we want to thank the students for all of their contributions this year. Your feedback policies to be revised in order to express student concerns and needs, which we feel is essential to the success of the school district. Looking to next year, we'll be continuing to college after graduating CHS and serving 2 years as a student representative to the school board. His hard work and dedication to this role will definitely be missed, but we know he is going to do a lot of great things in college and onward. I am really looking forward to continuing on to next year, working alongside a new student representative and all of the members of the. Most importantly, I am really excited to continue bringing student feedback to the district level and in helping policy work in other areas that I can. Gavin and I wanted to thank everyone who has helped us this year, community members, CHS staff and administration, and board members. We really enjoyed our work this year. Thank you.
Alice, thank you again so much. And I'm really, really here that you want to continue next year. So I think you will add a great deal next year. And I just want to open it up to any board members who have any comments on the student representatives.
Hi, this is Barb Higgins. So as the owner of several embarrassing pictures of Alice when she was 2 in my yard playing with my children, I'm a bit tear struck right now. Alice, thank you so much for such a beautiful sharing of your experience and your perspective. So I just wanted to say thank you both. And I love the student piece of our school board. It makes it so much more real and valid as an experience for our community. So I love you, Alice. Thank you.
Oh, love you too. Thanks.
Thank you, Barb. Gina, go ahead.
Just wanted to say, I mean, this is my first year on the board. I sat where you sat. I won't say how many years ago in an entirely different school district. And but the depth of perspective that you add to our meetings is something without which we would definitely be the poorer. So thank you for the addition that you bring to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Alice and Gavin for their efforts, for their professionalism, and for being really an outstanding voice of the students to the board. We made better decisions and because of you, and look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Jim. So next I will turn to Dr. Bass. And I want to start out with a huge thank you to Dr. Bass. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for everything that you have done to help our district, which has been tremendous. And I hope I'll have another opportunity to thank you in the future. But just in case I don't, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned how tremendous your work has been, and we really, really appreciate it.
Okay, so a number of things to say tonight, and so forgive me if I ramble a bit. Here we got, and I don't want to take up too much time. But first and foremost, I want to bring the student group forward because I want to have them go first. I don't want to have them to have to wait. And I have to tell you, this is one of those serendipitous things. I never planned on any of this. This all came about from a passing conversation I had with Nick Richards about an award he won and about track and field of all things. And then one thing led to another, and I said, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we could get a group of kids together and, have a seminar on great literature? And he says, well, let me see what I can do. Within a couple of days, there were 7 kids who wanted to do this. And again, this is all voluntary. There's no grades. There's no merit, if you will, other than just the joy of being in the class and enjoying the literature. So we did this. This goes back to, I want to say, late March. We're still going. And in fact, I asked the kids, well, June 4th is the last day of school. What do you want to do? Oh, let's keep going. So we're actually going to be moving beyond the June 4th date. So it's really extraordinary. It's an extraordinary group of kids. As I'm sure Gina heard me say earlier, and Jennifer too, I don't think they realize just how good they are, but they are truly extraordinary. And just say one other thing before I introduce them. Where they've been is a journey that you wouldn't believe. They've been to Oxford, Mississippi. They've been to Dublin, Ireland. They've been inside the Arctic Circle of Finland. They've been to St. Petersburg and all that is Russia. They've been to Thebes, Periclean, Greece. They're going to be taking a long trip down to England's jewel in the crown, India. So there's been a lot for them to see, and it certainly has provided a wonderful opportunity to reflect upon who we are and where we're going, which is a whole other set of issues. But nonetheless, one thing that came out of this whole conversation about literature was the grading issue. And so we actually developed an ad hoc committee. And that committee was composed of the 7 students that are in the class, 3 teachers, and 2 administrators. And so we met for about, I want to say, 3 or 4 times to talk about how is this whole grading thing going to work, and what are the elements that we want to pursue, and is this really what we want to do? Is it a competency-based grading system, or is it not? And as the conversation continued, we thought about who's going to take the lion's share about the presentation. And so, how do I say this? I was overruled very quickly by the students who said, you know what? We have this down pat. Let us do it. So they're going to do basically 95% of the presentation. I just going to And then I believe Mr. Corkin and Ms. Chalaskis will offer some other remarks as well as closing. But I really want to turn this over to the students. Their ideas, their thoughtfulness, I think will carry the day. I'm not asking for the board to vote and say, yes, we're all set, let's go. What I'm asking for the board to do, acknowledge the work that has been done and clearly note that a giant stride has been made in moving down the road to a better understanding about and how we might be able to create an opportunity for everyone to appreciate the value of a better grading system and one that really rewards learning for learning's sake. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I believe, Grennan Gurney is our first speaker.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Over the past few weeks, an ad hoc committee comprised of students, teachers, including Mr. Harrison, Ms. McDonough, and Mr. Crowther, and members of the administration, including Mr. Corkum and Ms. Chalaskis, have met in an effort to discuss grading policy for our district in the coming years. We have provided feedback on the enacted policies, along with new ideas regarding policies that might be proposed moving forwards. As students, we want this grading system to reflect how each of us is capable of achieving competency and further to encourage us to adopt a growth mindset.
And after Grennan, well, one of the most important decisions we as a school community have to make is to switch completely to a 1 through 4 grading system. To use an analogy coined by Mr. Harrison, for the past few years, we've had 1 foot on the dock with a 0 to 100 scale and 1 foot in the canoe as we've slowly moved towards the 1 through 4. Because we haven't made that full step, we're coming to a crucial point where this in-between stage is ultimately not at all representing the full potential of competency-based grading, and has caused most of the confusion coming from students, teachers, and parents surrounding competency-based grading. But by changing the numbers, we are changing how we view grading and the learning process as a whole, which will be the foundation for moving forward with this system.
So I'm Nick Richards, and an important aspect for the integration of this new grading system must be the feedback from students on how to effectively implement this system in the coming year. I believe I speak for my peers as what we felt our primary role was in this grading discussion. One major concern from students is how feedback on assignments will be received from teachers, as most students are confused on why they got a 2.5 rather than a 3 on a particular assignment. We as a group think that this will be an important aspect of the system, as teachers must explain to the students what exactly this assignment earned and why it earned that grade, so the student can then learn from their mistakes and improve upon them to understand the competency. Another concern related to feedback is how they will be distinguished from the group as an individual. What will make the student different from all the other students earning a 3? Work study collaboration grades reflect how an active student is in the class and how well they work with others. These two methods are in distinguishing student achievement. This way, the teacher can communicate what a student is doing beyond the grade they earned on a test or project. We believe as students that the feedback we receive will be a vital part of this new grading plan.
Inconsistency across teachers and departments has been one of the biggest complaints when 1 through 4 system this past school year. Students feel like they're being graded unfairly simply because each teacher has handled this change differently. To tackle this issue, we recognize and propose that clear grading rubrics must be established. This makes sense. Makes the most sense since not every subject can be graded the same way. However, if all of the teachers in one department are on the same page, there won't be any confusion or inconsistency in the students. This will further instill confidence in both teachers and students that is necessary for the system to be successful.
Potentially, competency could shift the focus of students from a mindset of competition to a mindset of personal growth. With this new system, grades would update as the student progresses in their studies. And once the student displays competency or mastery above, the lower or weaker grades at the beginning of the year would no longer be averaged into the whole. Therefore, grades would reflect the ending product of the year and illustrate what the student has truly learned and how they have grown throughout the course. Also, grades would be suspended and then released less frequently because students would be motivated to apply themselves to the best of their ability, rather than focusing on any certain grade. Numbers is not as important as learning. The intent of the new grading implementation would go back to the sole purpose of school, which is to continuously.
Okay, so when making a large scale change like this, information should be over communicated to the people that it affects, that'd be parents, teachers, and students. I just want to quickly talk about what that communication could look like. So in the beginning of the year, you could hold a number of assemblies, grade explaining the changes. You could hand out packets to teachers, and then a separate packet for students and parents, with the goal being that they feel confident in the new system and they see it for what it is, which is really a positive evolution in learning and evaluation.
So to kind of conclude, as a group, we have learned throughout our discussions what students need in order to successfully adapt this grading system. The biggest concept that we want the system to reflect is how every student is their own entity and should be viewed as such in the classroom. We want to eliminate the idea of competition and bring back the notion of learning for the sake of learning, and we believe these ideas in mind will help us do that this upcoming year. I hope you find value in listening to what our ideas are and can find a way to incorporate them along with feedback from other stakeholders in your final decision. On behalf of all the students, thank you.
Thank you. And just thank you to all the students. Could you go through and just introduce yourselves really quickly so that we know who you are? I know it's a little awkward doing this in the virtual format, even though we've gotten better at it. So Neonta, maybe you want to go first and you could go in reverse order.
Yeah, so my name is Neonta Nepal. I'm a junior, soon to be senior at Concord High School, and I'm the junior class president.
I'm Neil Shea. I'm also a junior like everyone else, I think.
I'm Shaylee Artis, and I'm also a junior.
My name is Alexis Glenn, and I'm also a junior.
My name is Nick Richards. I am also a junior.
My name is Sydney Kilgore, and I'm a junior.
My name is Grennan Gurney, and surprisingly, I'm also a junior.
So thanks to all of you. And I know that was a little challenging to ask you to go in the reverse order. But you did a good job. And thank you for your presentation. And let me ask the board members have questions about it. And Dr. Bass, I know, did you have a teacher portion or did you, is it okay if we go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I think I want to hear board responses to the student presentation. And again, I want to underscore the point. This is all their ideas and their thoughts about how this should play out. And then I think, either Katie or Frank Harrison or Graham may wish to make a comment or two. And then I do have Kathleen and Jim who do want to make some closing remarks about the conversations we've had. But it was important for us to have you hear the students first, because I think they carry the most weight, and their understanding of how this could work, I think, says a great deal about how we could really change the competency-based grading and competency-based education within the Concord school system. I mean, it clearly speaks volumes for what can occur.
Great. Well, thanks. And I know that Gina had her hand up. So Gina, did you have a question for the students?
Not so much a question for the students, but a comment, I guess, for the larger audience and the school board. Jenny, I've been lucky enough to be, or blessed enough to be, allowed into some of these conversations that these amazing young people have been having with Dr. Bass as we've galloped world history and world literature. And I want to say to them, and I want them to hear this, as well as the greater community, these young men and women are some of the best and brightest in our midst. They are carrying on graduate. They are carrying on conversations at the graduate school level without any request for credit or grading or kudos or attaboys or apples. These young men and women, and I hope they really hear this, are carrying on conversation and analysis at a level absolutely extraordinary. And they are some of the best and brightest that Concord has to offer. I hope that the community listens and takes into serious consideration what these very thoughtful young people have to say.
Thank you, Gina. I agree with everything that you said about this group of students. And I think that what particularly strikes me in the presentation that we've heard this evening is first, that they are reflecting the kind of shift in mindset from competition to personal growth that is reflected in that seminar, but that they're looking for a way to have that be available to the entire broader community, and to have a system of grading that really encourages personal growth for all students, and that that is really thoughtful about the way that we make sure that we have mastery of competencies and also of kind of habits of mind and habits of inquiry. That really is something that we want for all of our students. And so thank you to the students for presenting here tonight and for thinking about the broader way that we approach this for all of our students.
Mr. Harrison, did you want to make a comment or two?
Yes, I will make a comment. Certainly, everything that has been said about the students, it's been great to work with them, and I look forward to continue working with them. The thing I will add is that this has been a journey, a long journey, and Concord High has been working on competencies for about 13 years. I know that many school board members know that. You hear that from Mike Reardon and Tom Crumrine and many others. So it's been a long journey. I understand why the change has taken time. It takes because there's some paradigm shifts going on. I just want to add on top of things that were added about competency-based learning that it actually represents the best form, I feel like the most sort of mature way to implement self-pacing and allowing students to actually find their place with the competencies and with the standard. I've been teaching for 28 years. I've taught, I've learned and taught in a whole different system, and have evolved myself over the years about how I present things in my classroom. And I love teaching science. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. I teach biology, chemistry, next generation science at the high school. And students embrace and work with the competency model in such a way that has really brought more unique self-paced direction, which is a driving force in the classroom. And students feel like they have more ownership of the process. Now, it hasn't been perfect. We're learning how to do it. It's like we're getting on that bike and the training wheels are coming off and we're moving forward, and that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. I know Kathleen and Jim, you wanted to offer the close, so I'll turn it over to you. And then if there's other further comments, we'll certainly be glad to go in that direction.
Thank you. This is Kathleen Shalas. I think Nick and Neil and all the other students already said, I think they closed for me in a way. But I think what I will just say is what I learned through this experience of being able to listen to these students process all of what they were learning about competency-based education. What it really came down listening to them is that once they understood the system, once they understood they were going to be receiving more information, not less, going from just getting a 90 to actually being assigned a competency score for every competency. So they have more information, not less. And then, like Nick talked about, when we started talking about also their ability to be communicators, collaborators, being creative, and being self-directed, their eyes just lit up, and they said, so we'll also be able to know how well we're doing in those areas along with our academics. That is awesome. Because a lot of those students you're hearing about, like, talented, and they're academically competitive, and that's okay. I'm a healthy competitive person. Wanting to excel is okay. But I think it's important for them to know that teachers are going to report on the whole package, the whole person they are. And I could just see them really light up. And the last thing I just want to say is the other thing that I heard through all of them, and I know a lot of those students, I've known a lot of them for 3 years, and I'm very proud of several of them I've had in my advisory or in a class 2 years ago. They are looking to us also as leaders in the building to make sure that this is consistently and that they do receive quality feedback from their teachers. And they have emphasized that they trust us, and this is a better system, but those two things are going to be essential. And I agree with them. I think the implementation, because we've had a foot, like Sydney said, canoe and one on the dock, we've had a hard time with that consistency piece, and that's where a lot of the confusion in the community has come from. And so I'm enthusiastic pushing that consistency and making sure that a student truly understands what a 2, a 3, a 4 looks like, is, and exemplars are used. And I'm excited about supporting them and making sure that we follow through on those requests.
That's great. Thank you. Jim?
Hey everybody, this is Jim Cork. I'm one of the assistant principals at Concord High School, and also had the privilege of having these conversations with this great group of students. I know they're all most likely going to be college bound and their post-college plans if they're even thinking about that. But I can tell you for one, after these conversations, they would all just be phenomenal educators in these conversations about educational philosophy, educational research. They can certainly hold their own. And I don't know if I have much to add that hasn't already been said. I know one term that was used several times throughout this conversation we've just had is the term of evolution, and how all businesses, all industries are constantly evolving and improving. And that's really what this shift is all, another evolution within the educational field. Teaching methods are constantly evolving. The nature of the work and the work that students are producing, the tasks that are constantly evolving and have evolved over the years. And now it's time for the way we're reporting on that to evolve as well. And I would absolutely echo what Mr. Loss. What we are looking to do is we are looking to give a much more complete picture of the student on what we're reporting out on. We want to report out on their academic and how they're separating themselves that way, but also how are they working as a member of a team? How are they self-directed? Are they showing citizenship? And reporting that out to those secondary colleges and military and careers. And we're very confident that we would be able to do this. Like Mr. Harrison has said, there's been a lot of research and work that's already gone into this. And we just feel like this is another evolution that needs to take place within our system and how we progress.
Yes, I mean, I think you've got a pretty full rendering of, what our work has been around this whole issue of the grading. And I think you can see the philosophical underpinnings here. And the kids have said it really, really well. And it is about learning for learning's sake and about how can I achieve at a higher level for me, myself, not me compared to Jim Richards. And so that's the change in the focus I think that the kids have been able to come up with. And it's been great. And I really appreciate that. I think, though, that it's very clear, and I think I said this to you, Ms. Patterson, the problem is that we can have this conversation and the board might even say, oh, this is great, we like it. The problem is this conversation is only a very selective group of people who are listening right now. We feel it's incumbent upon us to have these fireside chats, if you will, with the community all along the way throughout the summer and into the fall, so there can be more conversation and more deliberation about how this is all going to work. There's got to be more conversation with the teachers as well to make sure, I think, as you heard them say, that consistency has to be department to department from teacher to teacher. So this is not a one-size-fits-all. We're not done, but this is, I think, a very important first step. And I think we've set the ground how we should proceed further. And so what we're looking for the board for is approval of the idea and for us to continue with these conversations and to open it up now to members of the community to come in for morning breakfast or evening chats to have further conversation about how this is going to work and what does it mean for and I mean there's all kinds of individual circumstances that will come into play here, and I think those have to be teased out. But I think you've seen a very good overview of where we'd like to see this.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bass. And I mean, I think what you just finished with is incredibly important. I think that this is a conversation that means a lot to members of the community, and it really, really needs to continue. And you've done a great job of setting it in motion, but I absolutely would like to see that further conversation in terms of consistency, talking to the staff, how does this work in practice, continuing to the broader community of students, parents, and we definitely would like to have that occur going forward. And I would see whether there are other board members who would like to offer comments. Jim, go ahead.
Sure. I would like to thank everyone for a very, very thoughtful presentation and one that was that you've discussed quite a bit. The only thing I'll add is kind of a follow-up to what Kathleen said, and that is not only do we need the communication, we're going to need the training of our teachers and our staff, very extensive training so that this is implemented correctly. And I really appreciate all the communication, but I do want to follow up or make sure we follow up with pretty extensive training as well so that it is consistent. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Any other comments from board members? Okay, well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us, and please feel free to stay on this meeting, but feel free also to leave if you would like. That's what we usually do in our in-person meetings, is we allow a little time, but thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you've done and will continue to do.
Hey, Jenny, if I could just interject a message
Yes,
from
Chuck.
several.
So-
I got a message from several.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I got a message from several constituents that the TV reception is spotty on Channel 6 and keeps going in and out. So I just wanted to pass that along. Yep.
So Jenny, so you know, we are feeding YouTube, and then they're drawing that feed to go live with that. So that could be some of the intermission. Part of the reason is they cannot dually broadcast live. The city is having its financial budget meeting tonight. That is live. So we don't have an option to go with a hard live feed because they're used for their budget meeting. That's my understanding.
Do we have any information on the quality of the YouTube stream? Is that also spotty? Do we know?
I've not heard anything about that. I don't know. I can't comment.
And when we say spotty, do we think that people are unable to hear what we're doing? I mean, how bad is it?
I don't know. I can't. I just got the message from a couple of people that it was spotty and in and out.
Jack, has anyone called that number that we gave at the outset? And can you repeat that number so that people can call and maybe describe what they're experiencing, just so we can get how challenging it is for people to view it?
Sure. It was, I have not had any calls, but it's 603-513-9008.
Okay. So again, if anyone is having trouble, I'll repeat the number just in case it's that spotty. So if there are members of the public who are trying to observe, who are experiencing challenges, please do call 603-513-9008, because we really want to know whether folks are able to observe. But unless and until we hear really not being projected well enough for people to hear us, let's continue. And I think that's continuing, Dr. Bass, with your updates.
Sure. So before we move on to the next subject, I do want to thank Kathleen and Jim. They've been active participants not only in this grading process, but also in the class that we've been having, which, as I said, goes to late March. So again, I appreciate their support and their help. And certainly a big thank you to Frank Harrison, Graham Crowther, and Katie McDonough, who helped to round a little group to come up with some very, very important points. Most importantly, I think, was Graham's comment that the Band-Aid has to come off. We can rely on having that 1 to 100 system as part of our grading system moving forward. So again, thank you to everyone who was involved in that. I really appreciate it, and it certainly was a total commitment. And I wish you all the best in terms of going forward as we approach next year. Moving on, I do want to bring up another issue. You remember back in March, we had Michael Worsley come forward. He was going to talk to us about diversity training, and unfortunately the pandemic occurred and he was unable to come with us. He is in touch with Michael Reardon right now as we speak, in fact, and we're looking to bring him back in earnest to begin our diversity training. It doesn't take one long to turn on the TV and see that it is not just Concord High School that needs diversity training, but the entire country. Someone missed the boat a long time ago. And another comment, and forgive me for saying this, but it seems as if for 10,000 years of civilization come very far, we still have yet to learn how to be nice to one another. Let's hope for the next 10,000 years we're able to figure that out. Moving on, if I may. So we are also looking at summer school, and what are we going to do about summer school? Donna Paley has done an outstanding job of working with a whole variety of people, committees, groups, parents, in fact, surveys out right now about how best do we go forward with our summer school program. Who are we going to involve in that? Who's going to help us to run all those programs? No, our summer school has expanded considerably because of all the issues that we had to face in spring. Also, Donna has worked very closely with Jack in terms of what kinds of monies are now available to us. Are there monies coming from the federal government and the state to allow us to increase our special education opportunities in our other summer school? Will help us to make for at least a better transition as we move from now, this remote learning, into the fall, whatever that may look like. But let's presume we are back in school in a normal situation. So Donna has done simply yeoman's work here, and I'll turn it over to her to give you some of the highlights of the work that she's done. But it's a very important part of where we are right now, and I think it's important for us to get it down right. Donna?
Thanks, Frank. So do have a lot of people working, by no means not just me, on putting together a great variety of programs for this summer. We are beginning our work remotely, monitoring to see what else we can do. But people are doing really amazing work in planning and also in providing and supports to students, and we'll be doing that as we come. They're putting in their orders for the kinds of things that students are going to need to have in their homes in order to participate. We just sent out thousands, I think I'm going to say thousands of books to hundreds of students across the city from kindergarten through 12th grade, some of which will be used in the summertime. And our committees that Dr. Bass mentioned are working on really thinking forward past the summer into the fall. We've begun with a groups that are working in the following areas: physical safety, social emotional well-being, teaching and learning, technology, and operational aspects. So 5 different teams that are out working, others involved. We're continuing to recruit. We have surveys going out. Actually, look for them tomorrow. We have parent, student, and staff surveys that have been worked on by parents, students, and staff, and looking for their feedback on what we've been doing so far and their recommendations going forward. So of moving parts, and we are learning more about the funds that are available to us. We have applied for and received a number of grants, everything from Homeland Security, FEMA, to money that's coming from the CARES Act, and we're making, we're trying to make very planful decisions about how to use those funds.
Great. Thank you so much, Donna. And I know the board members are going to be very interested to learn more about this, both in terms of the summer school opportunities and the poor school going forward. We know it's very much a moving target with the COVID-19 emergency, but it's also critically important. So we really appreciate that you're doing to stay on top of that. And I know that Matt Cashman as well is also working to work with the governor's office and the state officials with respect to the safety issues. So thanks to both of you for all of the work you're putting in on that.
Sure. And our technology department has been stellar. I know Pam's on the call and deserves a lot of kudos for the work that they're doing, literally night and day.
Yes, thank you, Pam. This is so critically important, and we would not having these meetings were it not for all of the technology work. So thank you, Pam.
So speaking of programs, as you know, last month we talked about Nate Levinson and his ability to come in and do an exhaustive research and analysis of our special ed and let's just say students in need programs, and then recommendations for us. And I'd ask the board to be in a position to make a decision. And of course, the board's aware of all this because I sent a note out to you guys last week. But, you know, a Parker who said, well, that's all well and good. And I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. It probably is a good idea. And we probably should do something like that. But I'd like to know what our people in the trenches have to say about that. Where is our administration? Where are our SPED directors? And how do they feel about that? And so I did that. I did go out and reach out to everyone. And I got some, as I said to the board, unanimous support that, yes, we really need to do this. This is high time. But there are 2 issues. Number one, we can't do it this summer because we have so much in front of us right now with this transition between the pandemic, remote learning, and then what we're going to be facing in the fall. Point number 2, maybe Nate Levinson is the best thing since sliced bread, but we need to be able to compare that with some other folks that are out there. So we'd like to send out an RFP in either September or October, get some very finite, direct commentary from various companies. What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? And how much is it going to cost? Then we and the board can as to what seems to make the most sense. So Dave, thank you very much for that suggestion. It actually turned into a very good one, and I think it's probably makes the most sense for the district going. So the board does not have to make any decisions on this tonight.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bass. Any questions or comments on that from board members? Okay, let us keep moving then.
So I also wrote to the board about some of the positions we're looking at. And we went round and round on the budget and what are we going to use and what aren't we going to use. And so we were left with a position of, I think, special education teachers, and Donna can help me out here, but 2 special education teachers at Millbrook and at Broken Ground. And then we had the one other position we're trying to figure out how best to utilize that. And so after some consternation, going back and forth with folks about what we should do, we were looking at a split position, and maybe Krista McAuliffe does a social worker, and maybe we do something else at Abbott Downing. And then after a lot of conversation with folks, we came up with which was a bold idea, but I think it actually could work really well. But I wanted to bring it to your attention and make sure you guys are okay with it. So what Krista McAuliffe and Abbott Downing decided to do jointly was to say, we'd like to have 1 full-time school psychologist at our building. So each building would have 1 full-time school psychologist. This does not increase the budget. There are no additional positions. It's just repackaging, if you will, the positions to us. Coincidentally, 2 of our existing school psychologists loved that idea and have put their names in, if we're allowed to do this, to be the school psychologists at those specific buildings, which would then necessitate us to advertise for 2 new school psychologists to serve in the other elementary schools. So that's the plan that we had, and we were hoping the board would be supportive of that.
Members have any questions or comments about those positions?
I think Jim had his hand up.
Jim, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just need to unmute. And Frank, so would there be a school psychologist in each of the elementary schools when we were done? And if not, how would the existing ones support the other schools?
So I think Donna can answer the question a little bit better, but just to give you a brief overview, so you'd actually have more concentration of school psychologists at the other 3 buildings by virtue of the fact that you now have school psychologists at Krista McAuliffe and Abbott Downing. Donna?
That's right. I currently have 2 full-time school psychologists covering all 5 elementary schools, plus both preschool programs and anybody who's in and out of district. By having the 2 full-time people between Abbott Downing and Krista, it would leave the 2 remaining positions, the regular ongoing, to cover the other 3 elementary schools and the preschools and out of district. It would be a much deeper concentration and provide more. Meanwhile, the 2 schools that we're originally looking at, potentially social workers or school psychologists, will have that focus. Will focus on clinical work with kids and deep connections with families and community partners.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
So Chuck, I think Tom had his hand up, so let me recognize Tom first. Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Oh goodness, my clock is going off. Why don't we go to Chuck and then I'll come back. How's that?
All right, I'll go. Yes. Yeah, I don't think my clock's going off yet, so we're good. So, and Donna, you may have answered it. I may have just missed it moments ago. The 2 school psychologists assigned to the 2 elementary schools, will their roles both be primarily clinical work or testing or a combination thereof?
They'll be primarily clinical work and families and partners. They will have the smaller part of their job will be testing, but the lion's share of the job will not be that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Tom.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Okay,
hopefully
it's after
the clock
8.
is under control. Yeah.
So I think this is working exactly the way I see our role, our respective roles. I think that the board's role is to provide resources. I think the superintendent and the administrator's role is to say, okay, here's what we need, then go ahead and get it. So I just want to say that this is the way it should be, and I applaud the administration. I applaud Dr. Bass for taking the initiative and saying, this is what we need to find out, and they did find out, and now they're telling us, here's what we need, and it will work best. They're the people that are going to use it every day. They're the folks that need it. They can tell us better what they need. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Other board member comments or questions? Well, Dr. Bass, thank you for bringing this forward. I'll say I agree with what Tom Cordo just said. I think that we approve these positions, but we as board members would really defer to the administration and the building principals to meet the actual needs. And again, we look at these hires going forward, but that's a separate process. Dave, did you have a question? I see that you're showing up in person.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate all that they've done as well. And it's very complicated. How do you address the social emotional needs of these kids in the elementary schools? I mean, part of our reason for looking at an assessment, which I wanted to seriously, I did want to hold off because I just think there's so much going on. But if we're contracting in for long-term personnel without really assessing what is going on, I have some reservations. That's all. I believe that they're needed, but we keep slipping people in here and there, and they're long-term employees without really evaluating the overall student services delivery service, because we have, contracts that are fairly with vendors who should be in part addressing some of these things. So, I'm not going to say it's a bad idea, but I have some reservations about this approach of slipping people in. So that's what I have to say, because we haven't reviewed student services yet. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Parker. And it's certainly challenging on the Nate Levinson side was not that we will not move forward with the evaluation of student services. I think that we are committed to doing that, and we're certainly doing that before we have our next budget next spring. And that was a key focus of it to my mind. I mean, what I heard was there's a real commitment to moving forward with the work, but let's have an RFP and let's wait a little while till we've gotten through the crisis. So and have felt for a long time that we need to look at this comprehensively and that we need to do so in advance of our next budget. And I hope that we will.
But are these people as full-time employees?
I think we are, but they were in our budget. I mean, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Bass.
Also be aware of the fact that on your contracts, basically. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Bass. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
So thank you.
I'm just saying, yeah. If you want.
Point. I understand you, Dave. I really understand your point. I don't disagree in large measure. I mean, we really need to get a handle on all of this and figure out what's the best way to go forward. But I think we also have a short-term issue in front of us, and that is making sure that we're providing services directly to the student. But let's, I think, down the road, like September, October, we need to do the RFP and find out exactly what's out there and how long it will take and how much money it's going to take. And clearly, this has been going on for a long time, and it's really due for a full-blown evaluation of what's in the best interest of the school district. Thank you.
So I think Gina had her hand up. Excuse me, Dr. Bass. I just want to make sure she gets the opportunity to speak. So go ahead, Gina.
Thank you, Jenny. I've got to say I agree with Dave, but I mean, I think these two clinicians are going to be vital, particularly if we go back to brick and mortar in the fall. We are going to have so many kids that are going to have such a difficult time transitioning back to a building, back to behaviors that are expected in a classroom that might not have been expected at home, behaviors that may have been permitted at home that absolutely are not appropriate to classrooms. These kids are really going to need that additional support. I totally agree with that. On board with that. But at the same time, I'm also concerned concerned, and I appreciate that these are one-year positions, or I should say contracts. Let me put it that way.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
That I'm concerned that we're adding people without having done the analysis of what it is that we actually need. So I'm torn, but I will tell you that for right now, I am landing on the side of we need all hands on deck to help all of these kids make a successful or as successful as possible transition back to school. This is going to be, in my opinion, a heck of an uphill climb to get everyone back to where they were when we had to close everything down.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, all good comments again. The one nice thing about this board, and again, this is my last full board meeting with you all, but you've been so thoughtful, and I really appreciate that. It's not just yes or no. It's a very, thoughtful, spirited conversation about what seems to make the most sense going forward. So I do appreciate that. I think it's a strength of the board to be in a position to have those kinds of conversations with your senior leadership. And it really is, again, as we said to the kids too, it's all about relationships. And the more we can have close, integrated relationships with one another, respecting each other's position, but at the same time feeling very comfortable saying, I disagree and here are the reasons why, I think is really important. So again, thank you for all that. I really appreciate it. I do want to talk about graduation just briefly. And again, kudos to Barbara for helping out. I really appreciate all that you and your folks have done, Barbara. I know Jen Spidel's been great. The robotics team has been great. I'm looking forward to the graduation. I believe we're the only ones in the state that are doing a graduation of this magnitude. And I know Mike Reardon, Chief Osgood, thank you so much for walking through step by step to make sure we got it down right. The kids are super excited. They realize this is a wonderful opportunity and it wasn't going to happen. So for them, they're treating it like gold, which is really great. So I know we're going to have the best behavior from our kids, which is really terrific. Everything is coming into play nicely. All I need to know from the board is who is coming to the graduation. You don't have to tell me now, but just please send me a note saying, yes, I plan to be there. Are you going to be there for A, B, or C? Remember, we have 3 graduations, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. You're welcome to all 3 if you like. Obviously, Mike and I will be there for all 3, but if you want to just come to one, that's certainly understandable, and let us know which one it is you would like to come to. If you wish to with you, that's fine too. Just let me know that you're doing that. We've taped, measured the entire field out. We know exactly what we have and what we're capable of doing. So I feel comfortable in making this overture to you. We do want to make this as supportive and family orientation as we possibly can. Okay, so
Frank, this is, oh, sorry. Frank, this is Barb Higgins. I just want to interject for a minute. Thank you for the shout out, but I really want to take this moment to give a huge shout out to Jen Spidel. So when I sort of said, okay, Jen, we get to make these, she's the one that did the lion's share of the work. I just provided the funding, but the masks are beautiful. And I manage a charter school and we have our last day of school on Thursday night. We're having a thing. And I said, hey, could you make me 40 masks for my students and families? 2 days later, 40 masks are on my kitchen table. So Jess Robotics, this is Concord School District. This is a phenomenal human being that's just doing what she can in a bad time. So I'm just giving her a shout out because I think she deserves it.
Thank you. Thank you. And well deserved it is. All right, Jenny, that concludes my remarks.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bass. And we will try to keep moving along. I know we have a lot on our agenda, and the next thing on our agenda is the Fleischman family donation, and that there are members of the Fleischman family who have joined the call, and I just want to say thank you again. I'm sorry that our meetings are always so long that we make you apologize for that, but it's very exciting to be able to see the good use to which your donation is being made. And I think Jack Dunn, are you going to handle this matter?
Yes.
Yep. So go ahead, Jack.
I don't see Rob in particular on there or any of the family, but I'll let him speak if he is. I had invited him tonight or the family to come on because I wanted to mention a couple things since we were doing donations. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment just so I can do these mentions. First were the financial donations to purchase food for families. As you know, we ran two different pieces. One was financial donations to support what Biz Logan had and Dave Millay had been doing in helping coordinating staff and volunteers with the New Hampshire Food Bank and them independently with the food pantries among all the schools to feed families. And they have ran multiple food delivery services, feeding between 200 and 225 families for up to 2 weeks. And anything that was left over went over to Boys and Girls Club, where Chris Emmon distributed to the families that they're feeding up at IHM, which is about 75 to 100 families at night. So we wanted to recognize them. We'll list those in the next meeting. But we also wanted to highlight the financial donations to pay lunch account balances. So the lunch account balances this year were about $18,000 in total. Overwhelming majority of that, close to over 15 students in a paid status. So these people had made donations to help pay those balances, and a lot of that was contributed by the Fleischman's family's $15,000 donation. And one other thing that we wanted to mention tonight, as I just transition one other place, sorry, and then I'll be done, was to, if I can find my website thing here, and if I can't, then I'll bag that. 1 second. Was the website we showed you one night, the impetus for what he had done with a donation. We had a local business that donated his time to write this website. The only thing we bought was the domain, which is concordschoolsfeedfamilies.org. And this was put up, and it is live now, and it accepts donations. So it is a simple 2-page site. Again, you can go on concordschoolsfeedfamilies.org. And when you do go to the bottom of the second site, it does allow people to either send a check or donate via PayPal. And this was a request that we had received several different times over the last 2 years, I would say, at least. And it really ramped up during this COVID-19 piece. And the Fleischman family was very appreciative because, their significant donation helped contribute towards another giving moment from a local business, Western Skyline, to create this for the district.
Thank you, Jack. I mean, this is a tremendous enterprise, and I think we are so appreciative to the Fleischman family, to everyone who's made donations. This is really, really important in order to enable us to continue to feed students, to make sure that we don't have those outstanding balances creating a problem. So we're very, very appreciative of this. And again, I don't know how to speak, but thank you for presenting this information.
So that everybody knows the balances will likely be zeroed out, but they'll likely be all completed by the end of the week.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you, Jack.
So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So next, that concludes our reports and recognitions. And thank you for the patience of those members of the public who are here. We're now moving into the portion of our agenda where we take public comment on agenda items. And I wanted to first acknowledge a number of comments that we received via email. And those comments had to do with the nominations of Kathleen Murphy. And we had several people who had expressed just a strong concern and desire that the district really have a commitment to doing everything that it could towards eliminating racial injustice and systemic discrimination. And what I felt was really important was for Kathleen Murphy to have the opportunity to speak to these comments. And so I had forwarded those emails to her. She is here, and we would like to give her the opportunity to talk about this a little bit before we take additional public comment. I think it will be really helpful. And so we will have her. we will have her speak first, and
Is
then
now
we will
joined.
and then we will go through our public comment period. But thank you for your patience, both the commenters and Ms. Murphy. We're really excited to have you here, and I think, as you'll acknowledge, I'm sure, these are really, really important issues, and they're ones that you would like to have the opportunity to speak. So please go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you, the board tonight, and the public, and the folks that are here that are members of the school district. I think you are absolutely correct. This is an incredibly important topic. Racial equity in our country, Dr. Bass said it earlier, there's been a blind eye to it for a very long time. And New Hampshire has, being the state that it has, it's been very homogeneous, and our state's changing. And our folks are in an op now in our history, in our state history, to be able to recognize that. But I really want to spend a couple minutes talking about the incident in Hampton. I don't intend to share the student names or the particular situation with the students. I have an obligation, and I always will have an obligation to protect those students. But I think more so for the folks that sent in the emails. And by the way, I appreciate that. I would rather have people tell me what's on their mind and their concerns than me not hear that. You know, I've been in this business a long time, and I've all the forthrightness and the honesty of people. So I know some of the comments were hard to read. I'll admit it. I'm, you know, everyone else, right? I'm human. But those comments, and I appreciate the folks that took the time to write you a note and to let you know how they felt. So let me say that before I start. You know, I have all my career been involved and very committed to community relationships, to connections, and to the work that we do every day in our school district. And about 18 months ago, we had a situation in our district that really took us down on our knees, quite frankly. We had received, principals had been dealing with some issues around racial comments that some young children were making. These were kids, the primary age school kids, filters, and that were concerning to the family and certainly the student involved. Mm-hmm. When I became aware of that situation, I met with the parents, immediately met with the parents, and assumed, and in retrospect, not correctly, that we had found resolve, and that we had met what they were and what the family was looking for. But as I just said, in retrospect, that did not happen. And later to find out that the family had filed a complaint with the New Hampshire NAACP. So that was troublesome to us. But we later held a public hearing. Our school board held a public hearing where we had a chance to present information. The family had a chance to present information around a manifest hardship situation. It was denied. The manifest hardship was denied to the parents by the school board. It was later brought to the New Hampshire Department of Education as a potential hearing. For a hearing was later withdrawn. That sort of stopped the situation at that point. But I knew as a leader that there was more to this than just complaints from a parent or concerns about their child. So I took it upon myself to take those steps to address it with the community and the school, and to address racial equity. And the first thing we did was have a public forum the school district hosted, along with community folks. We invited our local churches to participate, and an evening session where families, community, members of the clergy and school folks could all come together and discuss them. Very helpful, because we heard the things that we needed to hear in order to address the concerns. The next thing that I felt was important is that we needed to build leadership within our team and provide training. And so together, we began a process of training our staff. We first began our leadership team. Those are our principals, assistant principals, and directors, food service, facilities, all facets of our work. We spent time in the summer with leadership training. That training was sponsored by the New Hampshire Listens out of the Carsey Institute at the University of New Hampshire. After completing the leadership training, the next piece was that as a leader, I wanted to do an administrative review. I felt that we needed to look at our policies, we needed to look at our practice, we needed to review our staff training. And so I contracted with a third party to do a review, an administrative review of the incident, so that it would provide me with other opportunities to improve, to help people understand the situation and understand the diversity issues that are in our community. In that administrative review, we had a number of suggestions. Obviously, is reviewing school district policy. And since that time, I've provided to the school board new language in our bully policy, which we then use to train our teachers to make sure that they understand all the implications of that. So we worked on that. We knew that the next piece to it was staff training. And so we began that process. All staff, every staff member, cafeteria, our school custodians, our school secretaries. Just getting some feedback, I think. All of them involved in training. And I will say that that training continues to this day.
Sherry Cloutier is now exiting.
And so we will continue to do sustained training. In the meantime, when all of that was going on, I then received notice from the Office of Civil Rights in Boston. They had received a complaint via the Department of Justice. And this was at least 4 or 5 months after the initial work that was done. And we worked with the Office of Civil Rights. They were excellent, asked us to do another review, of which I did, and have asked us to monitor the data around any issues of bullying, racial discrimination. We also know that in the district, another policy that OCR recommended that we work on would be the Title VI policy, which was the anti-discrimination. Well, we had that policy. What we didn't have was a procedure for families, for parents, and be able to use in order to file a complaint. So that policy is now in process, being reviewed by the district's legal. I have to say that I am absolutely committed throughout my career. I have recognized that there are times as a leader that you experience difficult periods. This was one of them. And it took, in addition to the training of the staff, it took a lot of time to talk with community and families and staff, be able to help them heal, because this was upsetting and of concern to all of the staff. So those kinds of activities continue. I think the most important thing we can do is to continue to raise the understanding. We've really discovered that it's really about implicit bias. Our teachers will just, they do what they always do. They're nurturers. They help provide the support systems. But I think in some cases, we have all learned about our own personal implicit biases. Will help us to better understand what youngsters would go through who are of color, or it could be youngsters with special education. It could be youngsters in poverty, that we understand those differences in terms of the students that we serve. I don't know if that kind of summed up the as best I can without going on and on, but I felt like I needed to say that to the families.
Great. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your taking the time to talk about this. And I mean, let's listen to the public. I mean, clearly we also appreciate as board members having received that input from them. It's very, very challenging these days, as everybody knows, to really have the community engaged on these important issues that we face as a school board. And so I want to thank those who wrote in, those who have joined to comment publicly. And we know there's a lot going on for it. So thank you. And thank you to Kathleen. Let's move forward with the public comment period. And Jack, I think, has a slide with our policy. I think for those of you not familiar with it, we welcome public comment. We appreciate your joining. What we have done in our virtual meetings is to go through and recognize people one by one. And we do have a 5-minute so that we can hear from everyone. And I did ask at the outset that people identify comment section if they would like to speak. So I will start off by recognizing Darlene Gildersleeve. And again, just clear, this is the portion of our agenda where we hear public comment on agenda items. We also have another public comment period at the end of the meeting where we hear public comment on any topic. So let me start by recognizing Ms. Gildersleeve, continue with others who wish to comment. So please go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm Darlene Gildersleeve, and I'm a parent from Hopkinton, and I understand Hopkinton has a contract with Concord. I'm an interested party in that way. I'm also the founder of a group called Protect Concord Students Now, and many parents have reached out to me with concern over the nomination of Ms. Murphy. So I have, even though I have very, very ill with COVID complications. I'm actually in my bed right now and have been waiting on the call since 7 o'clock to speak. Even in my disabled state, I really felt this really needed to be addressed. My first question is, will all of the emails of people's concerns, will that be included in the meeting minutes? Can you hear me?
Yep. So
okay.
I think not necessarily. I mean, the concerns that were raised generally had to do with, racial bullying. And so
yeah,
I didn't attempt to summarize them, but what we hear request and
yeah, because those emails are subject to right to know if they were emailed to all of the board members. So I really think they need to be included in the meeting minutes. So the public's concerns can be, I really feel it's important for the public's concerns to be heard, even if via email. The thing that, I've read everything on WMUR. I've read the petition. There was a petition of no confidence that the Hampton community had put forward to remove Superintendent Murphy. I read every single comment on that petition of no confidence. And the biggest things that stand out, and this is on the petition of no confidence. And also I read every single comment going back many, many months on the Hampton community parent pages. There's a parent page called #SaveDave that was organized by Hampton parents. Read many, 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 many comments and the petition. And a lot of the comments speak about teachers and parents being fearful of retribution. And this stinks of the Terry Forston personality. And I think it would be extremely detrimental to the community to have that kind of personality. Not only to have somebody saying that, the kids were young who were making the racial bullying. It would, making comments like that is very dismissive. Bullying is a state law. that needs to be taken. Discrimination itself needs to be taken very, very seriously. But this is not only Superintendent Murphy's weaknesses in bullying and discrimination. When you have someone who is iron-fisted and doesn't want to listen to parent and teacher feedback, that's not the tonality that you want to have in Concord. You've already had that with Forston, and it's already failed. The other thing I wanted to say is General of the state of New Hampshire is the one who initially investigated Superintendent Murphy. The Attorney General just doesn't step into school districts with extreme amount of evidence. The Attorney General then went, as she said, they did go to the Office of Civil Rights. The Office of Civil Rights lawsuits are very, very expensive to school districts. One of the comments on the parent page and on the petition is Concord better be prepared to have a lot of money in their legal lawsuit fund to defend against claims that are going to be brought against them under Superintendent Murphy. You've already had lawsuits for Superintendent Forston, and I'm 100% confident that when you have someone with the personality that parents in Hampton are so fearful of, you're going to have more lawsuits in Concord, and you're going to have more taxpayers having to bear that brunt. So again, I'm calling as an interested party, but I'm also calling on behalf of parents who have experienced in Hampton the discriminatory behavior of Superintendent Murphy, not listening, and the extreme fear of retribution. Parents in Hampton are afraid to talk. And if you have that kind of personality in Concord, it's going to be very soon that you'll have another line for no confidence and more lawsuits and more parents who want Superintendent Murphy removed. So why do you want to put yourself through that kind of trouble if you've already gone through it with Forston? And then Superintendent Bass has done a wonderful, wonderful job of trying to implement change in Concord. And then you're going to have someone come in and undo all of the work and all of the heartache and all of the tears that have happened. So in closing, don't be so desperate to get a superintendent, no matter how good she is with special education. And the 3 board members who are really great advocates of special education might really like Superintendent Murphy, but you also need to look at the huge levels of racial diversity that you have in Concord. There's more than this, than special education. You need to look at her character. You need to ask yourself, where are her references? Who exactly is recommending her for this position? And then you need to make those recommendations public. So my final ask of the evening is any recommendations that she has had that the board, that any of you have received, make those public, because I want to know exactly who is recommending her for this position. You know, I was communicating with the
Ms. Gildersleeve, I think if you could wrap up, that would be helpful. Your 5 minutes is up.
The NAACP president, who is also the chair and president of the Diversity and Inclusion Council of New Hampshire under Governor Sununu, is heartily against the nomination of Superintendent Murphy. If you have a president of NAACP who is also appointed and tasked under Governor Sununu for racial diversity and inclusion, if he himself is saying that she would be a bad choice, the board needs to listen.
Ms. Gildersleeve, I think it's time for you to wrap up. We've got some other people who'd like to speak.
Yep.
So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for listening in. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. So we have Sherry Cloutier. Are you there? So Sherry is working on the microphone.
Okay,
I'll give you another second. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Sherry.
So I am calling in as a concerned parent. And I also, sorry, I've never, am I able to ask questions and have a back and forth discussion, or am I only making statements?
I think that right now we're just taking public comment.
Okay.
it may be
My
that we'll
name
be
is
able to answer the
Pedro
question.
Is now
But
joining.
we
Well, I
won't
would like
necessarily.
to also reiterate, I appreciate Darling, because that was actually one of my questions as well, is that I do think that the email statements or comments or feedback that you received should be made public. Of course, you can remove personal information, but I think it would be good for the rest of the community to understand concerns are being relayed to the board. And then also, I just, in light of with the racial and bullying, etc., case that took place at Hampton, I guess my questions for Ms. Murphy are, what would you have done differently? I understand. I was listening to what did at that time. There was teacher education, public forums, policy change, etc. But looking back, because we can always look back and make improvements or think, oh, maybe I should have done this differently. So I would ask her is, what would you have done differently, if anything? And then with the state of what's going on in the US right now with racism is widespread and very present all over the nation. And it certainly would be in New Hampshire as well. I am curious, as coming on as a new superintendent for that, what would you do to bring attention to that and be very proactive in caring for the students, the teachers, community, and building trust to know that knowing the previous cases that were by most mishandled, what would you do differently? I guess that would be my. It's a strong. It's many of us, regardless of color, it's a very passionate thing right now, and I am concerned for your school district in that history and the hot topic. And is this something that you want to bring upon your own district and community? And I know, there's also been Concord has had some struggles as well in the past with previous superintendents or principals, etc. So I think I would have you guys ask yourselves, is that something that you want to be taking on?
Great. Thank you for your questions. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through all of the comment, and then there may be answers to some of the questions. I don't think we'll be able to have a back and forth, but I do appreciate the questions that you're asking, and I think we'll hope to get answers to them. And certainly, Ms. Gildersleeve is correct that emails that went to a quorum of the board are public, so I think we can find a way to make that information public. I'm going to ask people who are not speaking to make sure that their microphones are muted, because we are getting some background noise. And then I see that Jeffrey Clay has raised his hand, so I will recognize you next.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good. Listen, I would like to encourage all of you to Google Keith Ingraham, Newmarket, New Hampshire. Every resident of Concord should do that, because what took place at Hampton is not the first time Mrs. Murphy has made improper decisions. When you read this, I'm confident what took place there. I was a teacher at the time. Mrs. Murphy really should not be in public education whatsoever, let alone being a superintendent. It's not personal. I think it took place back then. She should have went to jail. And the evidence is right there for you. As I said, I was a teacher at the time, and children were unfortunately raped and assaulted.
So
Jenny,
Jeffrey, I
okay.
I was muted, but I think we lost the speaker. So Mr. Clay, I don't know if you're still there.
Hello.
Phil Baruti, yes.
Is now joining.
So, Mr. Clay, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I think we lost you for a little while there.
Well, I was just encouraging the board to really do their homework, and it appears to me that you have not to this point. You owe it to the children to do the best background investigation you can, and that includes looking at the news articles that concern Superintendent Murphy and her role as the superintendent of schools. The history, you really should not consider her. I'm sorry, let me change that. You already considered her. You should not vote to confirm her as your next interim superintendent. I assure you, you will do the students and the community the best job by finding someone else. And that's basically all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And thank you for the email that you sent in as well.
I hope you'll share that with the other board members, please.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so let's see who, I don't see anyone else who has raised their hand. So
Jenny,
so
there's
Jack,
a gentleman named Phil on the phone. He had needed some assistance, so I patched him in.
Okay.
So if he is next, you're looking for another public comment, he is on standby. I think he is on. Phil, are you there?
Okay.
I am here.
All right, there you go. I'll mute.
Great, go ahead, Phil. And if you could just identify yourself, and we would like to hear what you have to say.
Yes. So my name is Phil Baruti. I live on 3 William Ave in Concord. I had the pleasure and the honor of working with Kathy Murphy for 9 years. I am a 42-year school counselor. I started my career when I was very young. I worked with Kathy in Candia. She was my principal for 2 years. Then she left Candia, went to Derry, where I am so grateful, will be forever grateful. I worked for her for 7 years, under her for 7 years while in Derry in her leadership. I don't know about the people that are calling in. I don't know if they've ever worked with her, but I did work with her. And I can tell you that she is a straight shooter, that she is honest. If you have difficulties, and she can tell you that there were many times we had disagreements, that you could always have a discussion with her. She would always listen to you. As a young counselor, as a younger counselor, she taught me many, many lessons. And I think with everything that's the Kathy Murphy I know, with everything that's gone on in Concord in the recent past, I think she makes the tough calls. I've listened to it tonight. I've been involved with situations like that as a middle school counselor. Those are tough decisions, and I'm sure they are even tougher for superintendents to make. But my feeling, having been under her tutelage for, like I said, a better part of 9 years, I just don't think you'll find a better candidate. And I expressed those thoughts to Barbara Higgins earlier today when I saw that this was all coming on. So I just want to pledge my support for her, knowing her as a person, as an individual. I know that people loved her, that I worked with her. She's a people person and she's a kid person. And I can guarantee you that she will be very, very visible in the community, and she will do, I think, a fine job as a superintendent. So I just wanted Kathy to know that there are a lot of people that know her, that worked with her, teachers, educators that think that she would be a fine interim superintendent for you folks. So thank you for taking my call. And I just wanted to say that.
Great, thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate your
Thank you, Phil
participation.
Baruti. This is Barb Higgins. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Barbara.
Jen, can I interrupt Jack something?
Yes, Gina, go ahead.
There's been a request on the chat to explain where the raise your hand button is. So if people are on the screen and they're looking at whether they're muting their microphone or muting their camera, if they scroll a little bit to the right on that bar, they're going to see what looks to be a hand in a stop position. That's actually a raise your hand. So if you click that, it will show up in the chat as a raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Gina. And I am monitoring for hands going up. And then I'm also monitoring for people who write in the chat that they would like to to speak. So the next person I have who has written that they would like to speak is Emberly One. So if you could go ahead and identify yourself, and we would be happy to hear your comments. And
hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay.
If you could just
sorry
state
about
your
that.
name. And no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sarah Mokel, and I'm a Concord resident. Some of the commenters, I wasn't quite sure if they were Concord residents or not, but regardless, I appreciate all the contributions and all the comments and a better picture of our school district and everything that the board members do for the city of Concord. So I just want to express gratitude for that. I have questions regarding Kathleen Murphy, more in, her handling of the incident in Hampton and the history that has been brought to light. I did just recently learn about how complicated that history was in the last 2 days. I did channels and express my concerns to my school board members. But what I have as a greater concern is that it seems as if Miss Murphy, I appreciate all you've given to children in New Hampshire, and I'm sure it's been tireless work and it comes with no shortage of complications. However, what I think Concord is in need of right now is a proactive vision. I don't think we need, and what I heard expressed in the past history was that it was more of a reactive kind of situation. And what I think our school district needs, and what I, as someone who is going to be in the district for quite some number of years now, having a 10-month-old, and I have 3 kids who will be in the district, there is the need for a very, very robust plan on not just racial diversity, all types of diversity, and fail to recognize that. And if we fail to plan ahead for that, I think, Superintendent Bass has done a good job. I think having the student voice is a real start to how we move our school district forward. And I just think that we're moving in the right direction, but I think there's so much opportunity here. And I think we need something very evolutionary. And I feel like that may come out respectfully. And
Great,
this includes well-being and, social. So anyway, it includes all types of diversity, including mental health, bullying, diversity, socioeconomic status plan. That's it, just a robust across the continuum plan.
Great, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So Jack, why don't you go through, if you don't mind, to see whether there are others who would like to speak who have not typed in that they would like to speak or raise their hand, because we do want to make sure that we hear all of the comments from those who are taking the time to listen and participate in our meeting.
Yep, I'm looking down the list. I see Alice, I see Ashley, right? So we still have some students still on. Yep. I see Carol. Carol McCarthy, assistant principal. I'm just looking down. Darlene has spoken. Anna. Elizabeth Young. Just verifying. Yep. Ian Burley one that just spoke. Jeffrey spoke. Jim, Josh. Julie Cox. I do not see Kate Fry.
I have a comment, but it's not on the agenda, so I will wait till the end.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
I don't know. I think I got through everything. I think. There is somebody that says a K. I don't know who that is.
Hello.
Yeah. Who are you? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, my name is Pedro, and I also signed up to make public comment. I'm not sure if my name popped up on the list, but just wanted to kind of speak out of turn. I'm sorry. I didn't know everyone was going to catch me, so.
No, that's okay. We're just trying to identify how you are, but go ahead, Jenny.
Yep. So Pedro, we would like to hear your comment, get your name, and we would like to hear what you have to say. So please go ahead.
Absolutely. And thank you to the board for providing me on this. Again, my name is Pedro Altagracia. I live on 10 Walker Street. And I just wanted to just mention, so something public health and something that has really risen to the front of people's priority list, in particular in the last couple of years, has been how do we be more inclusive and be more intersectional and equitable in our approaches to everything. Obviously, when you're talking about public health, you're also talking about education. So there's a lot of symmetries between the two. So I just wanted to ask Ms. Murphy, so given your past and given the way that you've handled cases of and discrimination, have you proactively or have been or volunteered to taking courses that perhaps will give you more insight to cultural competence and implicit bias? The reason I say this is because it is implicit bias, but then when you're studying both and being a student of both is where you understand how to unlearn a lot of things that perhaps may have led you to mishandle the cases that you've had in your past. So now that we're moving on into Concord and we're considering you to be a candidate for an interim, mind you, being an interim is in no position where perhaps you would be the right candidate for long term, or perhaps you would be the candidate that at least would smooth the transition for another candidate that you make the job easier for down the line. That being said, the student population of Concord is diversifying year by year. I just am off from a walk, and most of the students that I have engaged with the last couple of years that have lived in Concord are students of color or students of immigrant families. And the more the years have gone by, the more these students have kind of multiplied. That being said, it would feel as a resident, as a potential parent in the future, and even as someone who would consider living in Concord long term and having their children stay here because of how prioritized education is here, I would love to feel comfort knowing that the superintendent, whoever it is, has gone through the appropriate training to identify their own implicit bias of things that they perhaps have been taught in their lifetime, professionally and personally, to handle situations of racial discrimination appropriately and take the appropriate steps to follow up in case there is any incidence of trauma. So my question in the end is, any kind of certified training that has helped you unpackage your implicit bias that may have led you to handling the situations you have before? And do you deem yourself culturally competent enough to take on a bigger, diversified student population?
Great. Pedro, thank you so much for those comments. That's really helpful, and we really appreciate it. One question, we have a request from our note taker for the spelling of your last name.
Sure. My spelling of my last name is A-L-T-A-G-R-A-C-I-A. Alta Gracia.
Oh, Alta. Linda, did you catch that?
I don't think I caught it all. I was looking at a P and an H instead of a T and a G. Could you spell it again, sir?
Sure, absolutely. So it's A-L-T-A-G-R-A-C-I-A. Alta Gracia.
Great. Thank you so much.
Got it. Okay. Oh, Pam typed it. Thank you so much. Oh, and Sarah Mokel, thank you for typing in your name also. That's really helpful. Okay. Public comments. Let me see. I do not see hands raised, and I do not see any comments. So I think what I'll do is we'll close the public comment on agenda items. I think I'd like to give Ms. Murphy the opportunity, if she'd like to speak to any of the questions that were asked, we would welcome that.
So I hope I captions and all the, so I'm going to work my way backwards. I'm going to start with Pedro's questions, and then I'll work all the way back to the questions that were from in the beginning. So in fact, I have had training. I was part of a cohort, a leadership cohort sponsored by the on racial equity. Probably spent 40 hours in training and absolutely cultural competencies, as well as this was all part of the curriculum. And I continue to participate in training around those topics in our school district in Hampton. So I also was part of the racial equity work being done at the endowment to look at racial public schools. So myself and a principal have been participating in meetings as we begin to develop competencies for educators to be understanding of cultural competencies and racial equity. So I think I have had a broad array of that area. In terms of inclusiveness, I am absolutely supportive. I know people mentioned the special ed, and that's probably where youngsters were in their home natural settings, in inclusive environments so that they could be with their peers. That only continued to roll out into low income and poverty, as well as our homeless youngsters, diversity of youngsters in terms of their ethnic and racial background. So very much a part of that. Someone asked about the work, especially now with all of the things going on and the difficulties. I think I said that initially tonight. I'm very, very concerned about the mental health, the social emotional learning of our students, given the current culture that we're seeing every day. And in fact, I've served on the strategic committee for the state around mental health. I currently serve on the commission as an educator representing superintendents. The Hampton School District, we were part of a 4-year grant. We have just finished our last year around trauma and training our teachers and our staff around trauma, and have just incorporated a social emotional learning curriculum for our students. So that's been a big part of my career over the last 8 to 10 years, is all around mental health, trauma, and social emotional learning. Someone asked about that reflected that perhaps my responses reactive than they were proactive in anticipating what's next, what do we have to prepare for. And in fact, I think I've demonstrated that. Before the issues around the racial issues that happened in Hampton, we had already had a goal and an active plan to address equity in our district. We saw it. Initially, when I first came, Hampton was very much of a very homogeneous community, but we began to see it change and new cultures come to our community, kids from all over the world. And we've had to add additional staff in order to accommodate the youngsters and their families. So I think that I've demonstrated an ability to look forward and to see what the needs are. For the time that I've been in Hampton and in other districts, student voice is very important. I was very happy tonight to hear that there would be surveys that would be focused on students and what they thought about the various topics, specifically around student grading and some of the other initiatives that are going on in the district, including what would it look like when we return to school in the fall. So I think student voice is very important. When we just finished last year, we finished in the district a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, equity being part of it. But we reached out. I had sessions with students so that I could hear what they thought schools should be like. What did they see for the future? What were the good things that they saw now? What things do we need to improve on? And by student grading, which was standard-based grading. So kind of that's on everybody's lips. But I think you have to reach out to the students. I mean, those are our customers, if you will. Those are the people that we serve every single day. So I think that responds to the question about student voice. I absolutely support that. The situation in Newmarket, you're more than happy to Google what Mr. Clay indicated. In fact, there was a situation. I was alerted to a person who was a volunteer, was not a teacher, did not hold certification, but he did martial arts in the town and was alerted, and I'll never forget it, one morning, that it was that a student told us that he thought inappropriate things were happening. I immediately contacted the police, and it immediately became a police matter. And so I correct responses in order to that situation. It was a fact of felonious sexual assault on students that this gentleman had groomed, and this gentleman is in jail. I was asked, I think I was asked by Ms. Cloutier about what would I do different in Hampton? It's a great question. I think about that all the time. What would I have done differently? And I wish that I had had an opportunity here on before the meeting that I met with them. I wish that it had happened long before that January. A chance to sit down with the mom and the dad and had a conversation, and include the administrators, the building principals, to be aware of the situation. I was not aware of it. The situation was being handled in the schools, but when I was made aware of it, responded. So, but if I could have done something differently, it would have been that, to be able to sit with the family and talk with them. And again, I think Ms. Cloutier asked about equity and student voice, and again, same feeling. We have to listen to our kids. They live this every single day, and sometimes it's hard to hear from them, and they, you know, they often shoot it straight, right? They tell you exactly what they feel, and I think you heard that tonight with the students who presented. They said, you know, these are the things that are working well, but these are the things that we need to improve on around community, helping everybody to understand standard-based grading. So I would agree that we need to have a program that works with students. It just can't be just discussions. I think we need to have a consistent, sustained program around, because they are our future. They are our leaders. And we don't want them, as some 17 over the last few years, or the last few months, I should say, with some of the behaviors. So we clearly want to hear from our students, and I believe that the district needs to look at a sustained, comprehensive program around equity education. So I think I covered them all. I hope I did. I would say that whatever happens, be to talk with any of these families at any time, because that's always been my style, is to have an open door, to listen and to learn. Every day we learn from our families and our students, our staff. So that's critically important for a leader.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who commented. We really, really appreciate the input that we've received. And thank you, Ms. Murphy, for your responses. That's very helpful for us as board members. And I think we will move directly into our personnel agenda item, which I guess I'll turn to Larry Prince and see if you have it to bring forward formally. But I think our first item is the nomination of Ms. Merndon. So I think without further ado, we can move into that item. We have some additional material, Jack, I think that you and Larry wanted to offer to frame that before we move into that item as board members. Is that right?
Actually, I have the nomination here, but I will defer to Bassi, would be presenting this nomination for Kathleen.
Thank you, Larry. I also want to comment on one of the commentators who brought it up, but I mean, he's absolutely right about the whole issue of implicit bias. And for folks who don't know, Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize in Economics about 3 years ago, I believe, and it was all about implicit bias and how that affects decision making. And so, yes, that's a great point, and I think Kathleen answered that. In addition to the fact that she's taken courses, but let's not forget we have Karen Fisher-Anderson with us, and that's a huge, huge plus in terms of being able to have the training, to understand, to be able to root out bias, and to be able to deal with these very complicated issues in a very systematic way. So that's one advantage the school system has that most school districts don't. So I do want to make that point. And Kathleen, thank you so much for all the comments you made. I was just telling Jack, I was very impressed with your ability to respond to all those questions in such a clear, well-articulated fashion. Kathleen comes to us, obviously, with very high credentials. She was former superintendent of the year. She's been around the block many times, as she's already attested herself. She's been involved in schools in all different capacities. And so I think this would provide a nice transition for the Concord school system as we move into next year. And then certainly the school department would be looking, or essentially the school board would be looking for permanent superintendent probably in the fall, utilizing the NESDEC services. And so it's my pleasure to recommend Kathleen for the interim superintendent position for the board's consideration.
Great, thank you, Doc. And I guess not sure whether other board members would like to speak first. I know that for me, in thinking about what we need as a district and the past year, I mean, we really have struggled ourselves to understand and learn from our mistakes. And I think it's really important that we be able to do that. And we know and understand from what we've experienced over the past year that there is no guarantee that any institution is going to be free of bullying, harassment, racism, sexual misconduct, other repugnant behavior. What we need to do is to recognize, to have the structures in place to address these, to find these. This is what we've been struggling with over the past year. This, as Dr. Bass said, is why we have moved forward as a district with policy changes, with difficult conversations, with engaging students, staff, and community in our policies. It's why we hired Karen Fisher-Anderson. She brings great expertise that I think will be helpful in terms of our ability to move forward. We have been tremendously privileged to have Dr. Bass working with us and with the public to address concerns that have come forward, to really be listening to the community. And we had very much hoped to be able to have a permanent superintendent on board. We had such a wonderful engagement with NASDAQ, and it's understandable why we're not being able to move forward with the permanent because of COVID-19. Also, it's unfortunate. I think from our perspective, or my perspective at least, in looking at what Ms. Mace and her willingness to come forward, her ability to look at and attempt to understand and learn from her mistakes, to me, is a tremendously qualifying experience, in my opinion. I think that she has challenges. She has really looked to how to learn and grow from that. And I think that she has answered these questions from the public, which we appreciate having been brought forward. But to me, I think that she is very well qualified, not just through her academic, so through her experiences and how she's responded to them. So that's my personal take. And I don't usually speak first, but I wanted to, and thank you, Kathleen. So I think there are other board members. We don't have a motion pending yet, but it's been important to hear from the public, and we really wanted to do that. But we also need to move forward.
I just wanted to say, because it was a question that was raised by the public comments, I believe we made it very, very clear that whoever took this interim position was not going to be eligible for the permanent superintendency position. as we continue looking. And so we know that someone raised that question early that, oh, well, maybe Superintendent Murphy's going to stay on, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought some clarification around that might be helpful.
So we were explicitly moving for a 1-year position. I think that was the thought, that was the basis for the work that we had done as an ad hoc committee. And if you wanted to speak to that, but that was the conversation that we had had.
No, I had my hand up to speak, but I do believe that our feeling with hiring Kathleen would be in an interim position, that we wanted the two to be separate. And that's why we mentioned that we went with a 1 year, let's do a year and not sort of month by month or whatever, so that we could have consistency and predictability in our district with Kathleen. So that's my thoughts on Gina's question. But then I also would like to speak if I'm allowed to.
Yes, please go ahead, Barb.
All right, so I'm going to approach this from 3 ways. So number one, I was on the committee that vetted and found Kathleen. And anyone who knows me knows I have a very storied history with Concord and the district and schools and Bo and everything else. And so if there's anyone in the world that's sensitive to the power of the press and the fake news, it's me. And so, and the first piece is the 3 of us, Jenny, David, and myself, along with Jack and Art, worked really hard and looked at several other candidates for the very reason that because someone recommends Kathleen, we should take her. We spent a lot of time, Saturday morning meetings, Sunday afternoon meetings, really processing Kathleen. And I spent an hour on the phone with the superintendent from Winnicott and asking very, very pointed, honest. So again, anyone who knows me knows that I am not going to put up with somebody that's not a good person or doesn't do the right things. And so it was a tricky conversation, but that superintendent was very honest with me and very supportive of Kathleen. And his acknowledgement was that she was willing to do the thing that might make her unpopular if it was the right thing for the district, and that there were many sides to the situations that none of us will ever know. And as a board member in Concord with a report that can't be released or must be redacted and this and that, we all know that there are issues. I also know in my own personal experience, if the world could know my side of the story, they would realize that the Concord Monitor and many of those reporters just want to sell papers. And that might sound harsh, but I'm not sorry about it. I spent an hour on the phone the day before yesterday or a few days ago with a Monitor reporter talking about this nomination and Kathleen, and not one of my quotes is included in his article. And my feeling is he didn't include my quotes because I was very supportive of the fact that what we need is a superintendent that understands turmoil. We need a superintendent that understands being attacked and can still get up and do the right thing. So I get very frustrated when a newspaper article comes out and within 6 hours, the entire world hates our nomination. If we believe what the Concord Monitor writes, we are all in big trouble. And again, that might sound harsh, but if you all believe what the Concord Monitor wrote about me, you would never send your kids to my track camp. People know me and they know what's been written about me in the paper, and those are 2 very different things. So my firm and passionate and maybe angry thing is that one newspaper article by a reporter that doesn't know this woman should not make all of us now think she's a bad person. It really, perhaps this is personal, but guess what, Kathleen? You have a board member that's going to take you personally. So I just feel very strongly that we cannot be fueled by the words of someone that may not know exactly what they're talking about. Having said that, I have spent hours Googling this woman, reading the article to people, and in my inbox, I have as many supportive emails for Kathleen as I do admonitions to never hire her. So that's how I feel that we cannot take the words of one reporter to change hours and hours of vetting and research and conversations and trying to do it right for the citizens of Concord. My feeling is she has answered every question tonight. She has not shunned. She has not looked away. She has not been silent. She has done her best to answer these questions. Our district needs a superintendent that can deal with trauma, that can deal with conflict. I don't want a superintendent that's all fluffy and perfect to come here, because that person won't know how to handle what we need. And what we need is somebody that can have and get up and dust herself off and do her job. So That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Barb.
Yeah.
That Gina, I think you had your hand up next.
Nope, Dave was first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not seeing the hands right now. So.
Hello.
So Dave, yeah, go ahead, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, I was also on the ad hoc committee for hiring the assistant superintendent. And if comments, I would say that we have worked very hard at doing due diligence in terms of looking at candidates. I mean, I sat on the other side of the year, probably being the biggest critic there was, and then I ran and got elected with the idea that maybe I could help. But I'm not a yes person, agree all the time, can be contrarian, and no one's going to blow something by me without me questioning it. That's how I've lived my life. You know, the schools are probably the most inclusive of these kids and families in Concord. I've been a primary sponsor of the new American African Emoja Gala and other things. And these people come out of the woodwork to be part of our community. Does our community go out of the woodwork to welcome them? It's not just a school issue. It's a cultural issue. And we have a long way to go. And there's nothing more relevant than what we're seeing happening in America right now. It's scary. It's hurtful. And nothing is, to see all the violence and Armageddon going on. And right in the middle of that, we're hiring someone that people think may, in fact, be racist. I take this job and this role very seriously. And I feel like it is not an interim superintendent's position to give us the long-term vision. That's a board's responsibility and the community's responsibility. Kathleen Murphy has to come in and do a job for a year. And she's answerable to us and she's answerable to me. And for that matter, I think that her experience, and I'll mirror what Barb said, the fact, and what Jennifer said, I, asked her a lot of tough questions. The referrals, a lot of tough questions. And I'm not convinced she's perfect because I don't think anyone is. But I am convinced, given all that work, research, that she is the right choice. I stand by it. I'm not racist. I understand the public's concern. I'm glad. Criticism, bring it on. And I think it's still the right decision to bring on Kathleen Murphy. And that alienates some people, but I did my homework and I did my work, and I think it's the right decision.
Thank you, Dave.
So along the same lines as Dave, I mean, I was one of the many agitators where a lot of our unhappy constituency stands now. I was there a year ago. But I want to say that being on the board and the responsibilities, I went and looked up the OCR complaint. I went up and looked and read the report. I don't know how many people did, but I did. And I read everything that was involved in that and everything that was available online and everything that was available from the United States Department of Education and everything that was available from the New Hampshire State Department of Education about our nominee. I have read, and I have absolutely no concerns about on her side. So be that as it may.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you for doing that research. I appreciate that you were able to do that. Other board members wish to speak? Tom, go ahead.
Okay, well, it wasn't really until the Concord Monitor article that I was made aware of the breadth of the issues that had occurred in Hampton. And that may be partly my fault. I know what I read when Kathleen's resume was sent to us. I read newspaper articles regarding that. That was all that was given. Once the newspaper article, and Barbara, to your credit, be it right or wrong, it did it raised questions about, the foundations of the incidence of racial discrimination. How many were reported? What were the incidents? What was the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights investigating? And on and on. And so at this point, I'm not sure that I could say that the city of Concord, and I'm not speaking for them, but my sense is that this nomination is not the right time, and perhaps a 2-week period, a 3-week period, a month's time to give people more time to talk, to give people more time to research, to give people more time to come to the place that perhaps Dave Parker is at this point, perhaps Barbara Higgins is at this point, perhaps Jenny is at this point. I'm not there yet. And I'm not sure that the citizens in the city are there yet either. I know that we've only had a very small group tonight, but I can't help but think that the article in the Monitor on Sunday didn't get people really raising a heck of a lot of questions and wondering just what is the Concord School Board doing, even considering someone with that. And I know Kathleen probably, you don't hang around in education for this many years and get the accolades that she's gotten and getting to where she's gotten position-wise without being very good and having some great qualities. But that being said, not all of us respond to difficulties as quickly or as quickly and as well as the public feels like it. And I think that we found that in our very recent past. So those are my concerns. I'm not sure we're there yet as a board to be able to move forward, but I'm only one voice, and I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you, Tom. Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, couple of things. First of all, I want to share that because this may be Dr. Bass's last board meeting. So one of the things I'm most proud of as a school board member in my tenure is I was pretty integral in getting Dr. Bass on board. And if there's one thing I feel really good about it, really proud of, that's it. I'll be very candid with you. So thank you, Dr. Bass, for all you've done. To the question at hand now, a couple of things. One is as I said at the beginning of the meeting, that I have not had the time to do as much due diligence and involvement in the school board due to unheard of professional obligations right now. With that said, to Tom's point, I hear Barb, I hear Dave, and I hear Gina very passionately supporting Kathleen. And they certainly have spent a lot more time than I have. And Kathleen, you did an amazing job answering the questions. You were very thoughtful. You were very well spoken. And you know what? You handled the criticism very gracefully. So kudos to you. I have a lot of respect for that, because I like to watch how people communicate and respond, because I hope to learn from them. With that said, I'm not sure as a city where we are right now with our past, where we are right now, sadly, as a nation, that I'm comfortable moving forward. I think, to Mr. Croto's point, that maybe we need some more time. I think that maybe we need to do some more due diligence. I think this decision is too important. In fairness to you, Kathleen, in fairness to the citizens of Concord, in fairness most to the students. So I think that's where I kind of land on this. I do want to stress that you did a phenomenal job, Kathleen, answering the questions and responding to people that had some feedback. But I think where we are right now is we need more time I feel we need more time, especially where we are as a nation. This is such a sensitive time. We've come through the pandemic, and that's still ongoing, and now we have a new challenge as a nation that's not new, but it's kind of come to a head and it's boiling over. So with that, I'm going to err on the side of caution, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chuck. I recognize other board members that, but I also have a question for Chuck and Tom, which is when you say we need more time, I guess I'm wondering what you mean by that and what you're contemplating in terms of additional process. Are you, I mean, and we can call this to a vote if we need to today, or we can, I mean, I guess my concern is that we have Dr. Bass for the rest of the month. We have a lot of very, very significant matters on the district's plate, and we have a real need for continuity and just for me to continue with the direction that we have gone over the past year. And I do think we've made a tremendous amount of progress due to this board and of Dr. Bass and of many others. And I would like to see that continue. So I guess
My name is
the question
Pedro
about more
Altagracia.
time, the question
now
about more
exiting.
time is, what would that look like in your mind? Because I think we have little time, personally. So
Jenny, I'll
beyond
address that. I think we absolutely positively need to take time, Jen. I understand and I believe and I want this district to move forward as well. And I really do feel that that the public is just now getting some serious concerns and now they may be legitimate, they may not be. Kathleen, and I agree with Chuck, Kathleen has done a heck of a job tonight. Most of those issues, and I think that there may be some more. I think that the NAACP Johnson, who has indicated that things didn't move fast enough. I think people are going to say, well, how come? Why is he saying that? Why is he saying that? Why is such an esteemed person saying that Concord is in for big trouble if they hire Kathleen? And again, I'm not being judgmental about Kathleen. I'm saying that the people in the city of Concord to be able to get these things out. So what does the time look like? The time looks like for me, for people to perhaps have another question and answer period for Dr. Murphy. To now that Ethan's raised questions in the Concord Monitor, for them to say, wait a second, what about this and what about that? And perhaps do Jeffrey Clay's instant saying, well, wait a minute, what about this now and what about that? I just feel like we've had a little bit of a bombshell thrown in our laps here in the last day or two, and we need some time to kind of process through it. I personally need time to do some more research based on information that I was just given, and I was given it through the Concord Monitor. If I'd had it earlier, perhaps things would be different. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what my idea of more time is, and giving people an opportunity to really listen and say, oh yeah, I heard Kathleen Murphy speak, and you know what? Everything's going to be fine. It was all where we need to have. And that would be my hope.
Hey, it's me, Barb. Can I speak? Or
can I speak?
I think so Dave had his hand up first, so I'm going to let Dave go first,
fine,
then
that's
Chuck, and then you,
Okay.
Barb.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Dave.
Well, my response is to Tom Croto, who criticizes me fairly regularly. I'm going to criticize him. We have an ad hoc committee. We worked really hard at researching this. Of course you wouldn't know that. It was our job to do that. And we did it really with a lot of intention and really intensely. I'm not opposed to putting this off. But if you believe in our processes and our committee work and how we go about working on the board, then you'd be a little bit more respectful instead of saying you need more time. Thank you.
Chuck, and then
No,
Barb.
I was next.
Oh, I said, no, Barb, I said, Chuck actually had his hand up before you started to speak. So
Hey, if Barb wants to go first, that's fine. Either way.
All right, I'll go. So my response is when Tom started talking, a text message, and I said, "Look at you channeling your inner Barb," because in my relationship with Tom on the board, he's always sort of been the company man, and I've been, Barb, which we all know what that means. So I appreciate it, Tom. I feel like you and I have grown together as board members. Having said that, I also have a very, very, very negative opinion about the monitor. And I don't feel that the article was fair. I also feel, and this is again, Tom, you were on the superintendent search committee, and we very happily accepted the candidates that came forward. And neither of them worked out, which wasn't your fault at all. It was, so my worry is I feel we have an unbelievably strong candidate here. So let me specific question that I discussed with the superintendent, Mr. Lupini and Dr. Lupini, and when it kind of now I just had a brain cramp and forgot my big thing. I guess the point was that she was very, very unafraid to face the difficult things, and that she had incredible support across the board. And so I don't want to lose. Oh, and this was what it was. I asked, why do you think after going through all she's gone through in Hampton, why would she not just retire? And he said, I have not met a person career that is more passionate about education than Kathleen. She's not ready to retire. Because I know when I lost my job and I've had these things happen to me, it's crawl inside a hole and be quiet, step away, and not be involved. And he was enthusiastic and positive about her desire. District, we're infamous now. And his response to her even considering to come to us is that she brings skill sets with her that would help us. Someone that's been in the line of fire. So I guess that would be my addition. Tom, I appreciate our growth as board members. And maybe we do need to wait a week or two and give people a bigger chance to talk. But I don't want Kathleen to walk away from this because that she's going to be really, really good for us.
Chuck, did you want to speak?
I do. First of all, I still feel we need more time for a variety of reasons. And clock is ticking. I understand that we don't really, we would have to really give thought to what we would do in the interim with Dr. Bass's departure. I understand we're taking a chance if we ask for more time of losing Kathleen, and that's not fair for feeling the way I feel, and I hope that doesn't happen. But this I know to be true. I very much appreciate the work of the subcommittee that vetted out the candidates and spent time doing the legwork, the conversations, talking to principals, talking to references and things like that. And I think, I don't want to speak for Tom, but I know he does as well. However, we're making this decision as a full board. This is not the decision of the subcommittee. This is the decision of the board. So, and that's no reflection on anybody on the subcommittee. I can't say it enough. I appreciate everybody's work and I respect everybody. With that said, we're hiring a leader of the Concord School District for the next year. So I would rather be cautious and thoughtful and allow some time. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks to that. But what I do know is I would rather err on the side of caution in this important decision, given from where we've come. I mean, Dave and Gina, you're right. You were on the other side of the aisle up until this year. So you very much appreciate that and understand that. With that said, I would rather be cautious and make sure that we use the word transparent a lot. I don't want someone to say, well, you rushed through this because you know what? You were afraid of losing somebody. You didn't have a plan. So you just made a decision and it was still all hanging out there. And that's, again, Kathleen, this is not on you. And please hear that. This is a reflection to make sure we do the right thing and be cautious. Thank you.
Well, I guess having listened to everyone, and I really can't talk with these earphones in. Let me just take one out. Having listened to everyone, and and I have great respect for what the committee has done. I thought they did great work. I very much tonight liked Mr. Altagracia's questions, and I very much liked the way Kathleen answered them. And I very much appreciated Kathleen's answers in all of our interviews. I think she's an outstanding candidate. But having lived through more than a year of people criticizing us for being insular, for thinking that we know more and don't want to listen to folks, I do not see a problem with waiting for two. I think Kathleen is very professional. I think she's committed to this process and committed to the students, and I think she would understand if we asked her to. And I don't believe she would take any disrespect for that. When us taking the time for the other board members who have commented tonight to do some more research and read some more and listen to comments from both sides of the community. So I would support a wait of 2 weeks, and I don't think, and I think the alternative is if we don't vote for her, we're going to be waiting a lot longer than that. So 2 weeks doesn't seem like too much to make a right decision. So that's all. Thank you.
So I will recognize Liza and then Gina afterwards.
Thanks. I just want to again thank all of the people who wrote to us and who came to the meeting tonight to speak or observe. And I want to thank the subcommittee and Gina for doing the additional research. And I have nothing to station other than I agree that we don't have to vote tonight. So if we can set a meeting for a week or 2 weeks from tonight, just to give people time to, now I think people just were not, Superintendent Murphy was not on people's radar yet. And now that she is, and now that the community has had a chance to speak with her and hear more of her point of view and to hear her answer the questions, which I think she did an excellent job of, a week of offline conversations and then come back and make sure we still agree with ourselves. I think she's an excellent candidate. We are looking for an interim. This is not somebody who's going to be with us for 10 years, which hopefully our next permanent superintendent will be. I think what we need is, as Barb said, someone who can, be honest and transparent, work with the students, the families, and the community to continue the path of healing that we're on and give us time to identify our permanent superintendent. Thank you.
Okay, we have hands here. So Gina had her hand up next. So I will recognize Gina. And well, go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, I'm sorry this is hashing back and forth, but I know it's getting late and everyone would like to draw this to a close, but this is really, really a vital conversation, vital decision for our school district. But I want to throw out that anyone's radar to some extent until the Concord Monitor published what it published. But I've got to say that I don't Monitor did its due diligence before it wrote its article. And the errors that were included in that, and I mean error, the editorial staff really needs to go online and apologize for the mistakes that were included in their article that made a substantial and material difference to the tenor of the article. And I think in large part for what people took away from that article regarding the whole bullying incident. Honestly, the OCR stuff is online. It's public record. You can look it up. Anyone can look it up. I encourage anyone who feels even vaguely concerned to go look it up. The other piece that I have that really, I think until now I've done a pretty good job biting my tongue on this one, but I'm not going to at this point. The whole thing about the principal and the 300-person petition to remove her because she placed him on administrative leave. Well, having been on the other side of that and wanting certain teachers to be placed immediately upon administrative leave once the allegations were made, and he wasn't, and people were frosted, I don't think it's fair to say, well, when an allegation was made and the alleged perpetrator was not was placed on immediate leave, as in my opinion was appropriate, so that a thorough investigation could take place, Superintendent Murphy gets castigated for doing the absolute right thing according to protocol. So I'm not known necessarily for biting my tongue or not giving my opinion or watering things down, but I got to tell you, that really frosts my cookies, that people want to argue that what Terry Ford is wrong, and I happen to agree with that, but then what Superintendent Murphy did was wrong, and I don't agree with that. You need alleged victim until you have enough information to come to a conclusion. So I don't even think that should be considered even on the table. End of my discussion. End of my rant for tonight, I think.
Before I call on anyone else, I continue to wonder what we gain by taking more time. I mean, I do think, and I know I was a member of the ad hoc committee and spent time, but you know, all of us as board members have had the opportunity to have several conversations with Ms. Murphy. We've all had the opportunity to do background research, and I think that I understand the public and making sure that allegations are responded to, but frankly, I do feel Murphy responded to everything that we heard from. There was nothing I heard tonight that I think she did not respond to. And I'm glad that we had the interest in this, that we did have public comment. It's very challenging to get people to engage right now. But to me, I think it's important to look at the substance of what concerns were raised. And I think it's appropriate just because the issue of racial bullying is such a significant issue. But frankly, I think that Ms. Murphy responded to those allegations, and I am comfortable moving forward. I guess the question is, what do we gain by taking more time? And I'm still not really understanding what we gain other than just a further rehash of issues that conversations with. I feel, for me personally, that I have enough information that I feel confident moving forward.
Can I speak now, Jenny?
I'm just wondering if there's, I mean, we have one board member who has not yet spoken, and that she doesn't have to, but I want to make sure that everybody does have the opportunity to speak if they wish to. So Danielle, if you wish to speak, I will recognize you.
Sure. I guess I've just been reserved because I've been on the fence as well. I felt very strongly about Kathleen, and then reading the article, I did sort of take a step back, like Tom said, and I felt like I did need more time. But as people have mentioned, she's done such a great job of addressing those concerns. I'm on the fence as well. So I was for Tom for asking for more time, but like you said, I'm just not sure where that would put me, if it would put more questions in my mind. So that's where I'm at right now. This is not helpful. Sorry.
No, thank you, Danielle. I appreciate it. And I'm not hearing any board members saying we want to reject this nomination. What I'm hearing is that there are people who feel that they could use more time. And I want to respect that. At the same time, I really do think it's incredibly important for us to move forward as quickly as we possibly can. And, you know, it's up to us. I mean, as Dave said, we're the ones that need to make the hard decisions here. We're the ones that need to provide the leadership here. And I am okay making a hard decision, even if it's unpopular. But
well, and I wanted to point out that I was the one in our little subgroup here, so the public can know, that was hesitant to make it so quick. Why do we have to vote June 1st? Why can't we? I really fought to take the time. So now I'm listening to these other board members say, oh, we need more time. And, you know, my concern too is the hypocrisy. You know, we're angry at our administrators for not taking the action that she took. And now because she took it and it was unpopular, you know, now that's critical on her end. And so part of me feels like 2 more gives more people, and please, I need the public to know, I don't want to quelch anyone's voice, but you know, as a board, we either trust our subcommittees and our interview committees and our board members, or we don't. And if anyone on the board doesn't want to hire a bad person, because I've been on the receiving end of bad several times, and I guess I would implore us as a board to trust me on this, and to know that I wouldn't fight for something that I didn't really truly feel in my very shattered heart was a good thing. And maybe that's emotional, but that's how I am tonight. Thanks, Jenny.
Danielle and then Chuck.
I don't have anything else. I think it was Dave raising his hand, not me.
Okay. So Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to throw something out. It's an idea or a perceived perception, and it's getting late, and I'm getting tired, as I'm sure we all are. So this may not come out as well spoken as I wish it would. But think about the perception of this. We're all Caucasian on the board. We've had interactions with people with color. I don't know if some of the colors were or not. I have no way of knowing. But I wonder, we talk about implicit bias. It would be interesting to hear, and I certainly, again, Superintendent, you did anything wrong, you answered the questions phenomenally. With that said, I'm wondering if somebody here on this board was a person, would they have a different perception? That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Dave, go ahead.
Well, thanks to the other board members. If this were a perfect world, I don't have a problem waiting to make a decision. That's really not my concern. This isn't a one-issue candidate, is what I'd like to say. I asked a lot of difficult questions, and one of the things I've learned is that she is the most kid-centered superintendent. That's what they said up and down the board. Her understanding of special education, not only with her administrative work, but also working with the
can't
state.
hear a word you say while I'm listening. No, not yet. They're still discussing. We're still discussing.
Somebody's mic is on, and they might want to shut it off.
Like you guys in the past year facing the accusation and all that trouble, you became a one-issue board. Now we're facing another one-issue and it isn't one issue. This is a very experienced person who is kid-centered. We did a great job with Dr. Bass, and he's come in and been really positive. I think we make good decisions on this board. This is a smart board with competent people. I don't personally really have a problem waiting, but it doesn't seem, as Jenny said, that what are we going to gain besides having the public feel like we're listening to them? And I think we do anyway, listen to what they have to say. And I'm disturbed by racism. And right now it's, as I said, a horrible time to like have this be the issue. It would 2 weeks wait to heal? Yeah, but we have graduation to go through. We have the next 2 weeks are brutal. What we're going to do with those 2 weeks to make this decision any easier. I respect taking the time, but I don't know what we're going to gain from it.
Jim, go ahead.
Well, I think I appreciate having the discussion, right? I think this is important. I think the things we've learned over the year and a half is that we have to have the discussion and people have this discussion. I feel like, Kathleen has satisfied of my concerns, but I have great respect for my fellow board members. And I think waiting 1 week does not hurt anything. I think she's done a great job. I think her credentials speak for herself. But I've learned to, respect the fact need to do their research in their own time and come to that conclusion. That being said, I agree wholeheartedly with Gina with regards to the fact of putting someone out while we created an investigation, the correct procedure and what I would have wanted somebody to do in our district as well. So that doesn't play into this at all. I'm comfortable waiting to vote for a week, and I think we shouldn't put it off very long. But I think a week, I can board members that end, and if that makes us a better decision and better discussions, which I think the discussion has been great. I like the fact that everyone is being very honest and exploring this from all sides. But, I would support Thomas to delay this 1 week.
So before we have motions, I have one additional thought, which may be consistent with what you've suggested, also be consistent with what others have suggested. One of the emails that I got came in right before the meeting started, and I don't know whether other board members had the opportunity to read it, but I thought it asked good questions, and I thought it asked questions that really speak to our leadership as a board. And I think it's important for us not to have these questions on racial injustice and systemic discrimination just on our nominee for interim superintendent, but really focus on the commitments that we're willing to make as a board and as a district in this area. And members would be open to making commitments in this area. And I think that Ms. Murphy would be open to making commitments in this area. To the degree that we choose to take more time, maybe it would be for us to focus in a more systematic way on this issue that has happened to have been raised because of the context and the timing and the situation that Ms. Murphy faced. If we are going to take more time, let's take more time, not just to look at her track record, but to think about what commitments we can make to address the elimination of racial injustice and systemic discrimination, and really what will we do to make a commitment to being accountable in that area. So maybe we should broaden it. So that's just my thought and suggestion. I don't know what people think about it.
Karen Fisher Anderson is going to be addressing these things with real intention. She's very talented, and she will be wonderful for our district, and that's why we hired her. And I think that's awesome. She will be leading the way, and we can use her expertise. Title IX is becoming a very big thing, and a lot of it is about racism, sexual discrimination, etc. So I think we've made those decisions in our work. So, but I agree with you, Jenny. Thank you.
This is Barb.
Go ahead, Barb.
I just received a text message from Deli Champagne, who's a very huge advocate of mental health proponents, and she is a huge supporter and fan of Kathleen. And I throw it out there because racial issues, we're talking about bullying, we're talking about very, very child-centered, tender things in relationship to this candidate, to this superintendent candidate. So I just wanted to share. She didn't speak earlier. She wanted me to know how she felt. She was comfortable with me sharing, so I'm sharing.
Thank you, Barb. Well, we've had a lot of discussion and we don't have any motions.
We move to vote.
So if someone would like to make a motion, then let's.
I hope that we select Kathleen Murphy for our interim superintendent.
So Dave has moved that we approve the nomination of Ms. Murphy. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
So it's been moved by Dave, seconded by Gina. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes, that's me, Barb. I just encourage our board I encourage our board to understand that sometimes the hardest decision, the best decisions are the hardest decisions. And we have a situation right now that the Concord Monitor has created drama about. I am very clear on this. So I'm just encouraging our board to really think, and I'm going to ask board members that have given me a hard time bringing my PTSD into the boardroom. I want all of you to know that this is an important decision. So.
Thank you, Barb. Any further discussion? So we have some people who are writing comments on our meeting chat who I think are not board members. I'm trying to monitor and see. So, all right, I'm seeing no further discussion, so I will call the roll on the motion. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Crodo.
No.
Mr. Crush.
No.
Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Sorry, aye.
Ms. Poinier.
Aye.
Mr. Richards.
No.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry.
We were waiting in suspense. The chair votes aye.
Yes.
So the motion passes on a 5-4 roll call vote. So I expect we'll have further conversations, but I think we've taken our vote.
Welcome, Kathleen.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Let's move on to our next item.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
And that is CAA nominations. And for that, I will look to Dr. Bass.
Yes, thank you. So I want to go back to nominations.
Is now exiting.
Forward. I think Larry's checked into this, and I want to say it's a record, the amount of nominations that we've been able to accrue before the school year ends. I think Larry went back about 8 years and said he's not seen this many nominations
John Cochran
through
Is
this
now
fast.
exiting.
And so we're really pleased with the quality of people we've been able to bring forward. Again, as I mentioned last month, I believe, there's been a lot of work on the part of senior administration, reached a lot of positive momentum and a lot of positive media coverage on Concord School District. We're talked about a lot. As I mentioned to you, the commissioner has talked about us as well. So I think that's all helped in terms of generating interest on the part of outside folks who may wish to want to come to Concord. So with that, I'll turn it over to Larry, but he's got a number of really good nominations that he would like to bring forward. And my last comment on this is I believe we only have maybe a handful of positions to fill for the rest of the year, which is remarkable. Larry?
That is true. We're in very, very good shape for this time of year. So first, I'd like to bring forward two administrator nominations. We have been lucky enough to find both of our Runway Middle School assistant principals. So one of them is Carrie Finnegan. She was our director of special ed at the middle school. So she'll be assuming one of the assistant position roles at an annual salary of $122,138. And Paula Mercier, who's new to the district, will be the other middle school principal, assistant principal, same amount to 138.
Jenny, are you looking for a motion to approve those?
Oh, she's on mute.
Mute.
Sorry, because
sure.
if you are,
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve those recommendations or nominations.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
Thank you, Jim. Seconded by Chuck. Any discussion? All right, I will call the roll on the CAA nominations. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So those are approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have 4 leave of absence requests. These are from folks who are in positions now and will be taking another position in the district. So they're requesting a leave of absence from their position. So then you'll see their recommendation or their confirmations later on. Jesse Camacho is requesting a 20% leave from his special ed position to take a 20% math department position. Heidi Krumrein is requesting a 40% leave from her English position so she can accept a 40% literacy coach position. Kristen Houghton is requesting from her position as the curriculum facilitator so she can do the English and ELL reading department. And Lynn Vinskis is writing to request a 40% leave from her teaching schedule to be a 40% science coach at the high school.
Great. Any questions on the leave of absence requests?
Larry, on your sheet, you also have listed Jeffrey Fulham and Allison Holt.
I'm sorry, I didn't. They're on the actual board packet.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, so I think Jeff Fulham is 20%. He's taking a 20% position from his position to take the an art teaching position.
That's
And
correct.
Allison Holt, I don't have that in front of me, Tom, I'm sorry.
Allison Holt is 30% to continuing this 1 year only percent science teacher.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we had a total, yeah.
Great. Tom, thank you for the question. Any other questions on the leave of absence requests? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the leave of absence request?
So moved by Barb.
Thank you, Barb. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Tom, I think that was you, is that right?
It was.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Croto?
Aye.
Mr. Crush?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Poinier?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so those are approved 9-0. Okay, thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Next, we have the CEA nomination or confirmations, and as Dr. Bass said, we have 28 of them for you tonight. So we'll be going first with those of our existing staff and then new teachers to the district, but I'll do them at once. So Jesse Camacho, 20% math teacher at a salary of $17,121. Heidi Krumrein, a literacy coach at the high school, a 40% position, $33.22. These are both 1 year only. Jeff Fulham, art teacher, 20%, 1 year only, $17,121. Allison Holt, science teacher, 30% position, $23,617. That's a 1 year only position. Kirsten Houghton, a curriculum facilitator at the 40% position at $34,242. Zach Prosak, a English teacher at the high school at $1,548. Lynn Vinskis, the science coach at the high school, 40% position at $35,322. Eric Diamond, classroom teacher at Runlet Middle School at $78,722. Ann Laney as the school nurse coordinator at $63,672. Allison Casco, classroom teacher at $88,000. Hang on one second here. Tina Marie Hussey, a classroom teacher at Beaver Meadow School, excuse me, $50,112. Andrea McMillan, the ELL teacher at Millbrook School, that's a position at $38,038. And then folks who are new to the district this year, Alice Oktursky, District World Language, a 40% position at $17,994. Heather Zerby, school nurse at the high school at $58,812. Brianna Durant, a classroom teacher at Runlet Middle School, $64,900. Lisa Nordegraf, a music teacher at Runlet Middle School. This is a first semester only position, so she'll be working at a rate of $22,369. Sarah Newt, a classroom teacher at Runlet Middle School at $64,957. And Megan Vasconcelos, a classroom teacher at Abbott Downing at $68,196. Rachel Casasanta, a special education teacher at Broken Ground at $64,957. Katrina Ferretti, a special at Broken Ground, excuse me, $57,849. Megan McKinnon, a classroom teacher at Broken Ground, $59,784. Hannah Hoyer, a classroom teacher at Broken Ground, $62,348. Robert Walters, special education teacher at Millbrook School, $50,112. Don't be worried about his address. He'll be moving to New Hampshire And that should do it.
Great. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Any questions about any of the teacher confirmations? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the teacher nominations as brought forward by the district administration.
Okay, so moved by Chuck. Is there a second?
I'll second. Gina.
Gina, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Mr. Croy. Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Poirier.
Aye.
Mr. Richards.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so the nominations are approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Great. So I think that is it for personnel. Next on our agenda is the superintendent search update. I don't think we have much to add at this time. I think as we've announced, we unfortunately had to suspend our permanent, but we plan to resume it in the fall, and we are incredibly appreciative of the good work that was done by our screening committee. I think it was incredibly helpful to have all of the public input, and it will be helpful as we move forward. So thank you to everyone who participated in that. And Tom, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add, but thank you for your work leading that screening committee.
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Great. So next is negotiations update. Chuck, I'm assuming that you'd rather that I give it, although you could also give it.
No, you know what, Jenny, I was not at the meeting, so you know what, yeah, go ahead, take the lead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. So the negotiation met on May 26th. It's a non-meeting under RSA 91A, so there's nothing additional to report at this time. But as Chuck mentioned, he was unable to attend, so I chaired that meeting as the vice chair. So next is the proposed calendar of meetings. And for that, Jack, do we have a slide with those, or is that just in the board packet?
That is just in the board packet, but I'll share the screen and bring up the calendar so everybody can see it.
Okay. I think we don't have a lot scheduled. We've got a joint facilities and finance committee meeting 11th. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Jack. And then we have a special meeting on the budget scheduled for June 25th. And so I don't know if Jack, Jim, or Tom would like to speak to any of those meetings.
Jenny, as far as, this is Jim, as far as the meeting on the 11th, from a capital facilities point of view, you were going to talk a little bit about summer projects, and just felt in the big picture that it would be good to combine it with finance. And I'll let Tom talk about anything involved with that.
Sure. In speaking with Jack a number of times recently, there's probably, I don't want to speak too far out of turn, but there's probably going to be some savings in the budget just based on the fact that our schools haven't been open, and that there are some other savings due to some issues that occurred last year. And so the Finance Committee and the capital facilities will put their heads together and decide where we can put this realized savings to the good of our school buildings, and that'll be the main topic of discussion. And Jack, if you want to jump in on that, that'd be terrific.
Sure. The reason we really wanted to those together was because, again, as Tom mentioned, there's going to be probably some significant savings in the budget, and we're going to be looking to make recommendations that you put that money, mostly because of what we continue to see on the fiscal side, what we anticipate coming on the fiscal side on both the city and the local tax burden, in trying to prepare for that. The other component on the capital facilities side is one of the items we didn't get to, as the budget had to be elongated with this whole COVID situation, is project will be 3 years in October. And there is a significant amount of money left over, close to $1 million. And we are going to bring forward a proposal on what you need to do with that. Remember, this isn't like newfound money and you can do anything with it. It has restrictions. You've already borrowed, and it has to be going towards items with 20 plus years of life. So we have some ideas on what to do with that. And we wanted to start putting things in place for you to feel comfortable to make the motions to do that. Again, the standard for bonding versus reprioritizing money is very different. If you think back to what we did with the stable money last year, we reprioritized that $1 million to put a roof on a part of the high school. Again, the standard is lower. The board still needs to vote, but we don't go through a lot of those hoops that we need to when we have to put the full faith and credit of the district at hand. This is already money that's been borrowed. We just need to reprioritize it. So there will be the two topics we'll discuss on the 11th with a special board meeting on the 25th.
Thank you, Jack. And one of the other things I just want to bring up is we are not at this time building a middle school, and Matt will be discussing some of the things we need to do to keep our existing schools running. So I think it'll be a lively and full meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tom?
So also, Jack and I have talked about his need to, and he has done it, and he's in constant contact with the city to be sure that both sides know what's happening financially in the event there needed to be any serious discussion around lack of revenue or what have you with the city of Concord. Jack would be totally aware of that, as he and I think it's Mr. LeBrun have been talking, at least to understand.
I do communicate, yes, Tom, with Deputy City Manager for Finance, Brian LeBrun, and I'll give you an update on that as we get on the 11th, but we make sure we are in constant contact as these situations develop. But again, we also see things through various national business administrator outlets, news releases that we're getting, stuff from ASBO, and it just might be a delayed hit of what comes impacts us. Plus also with the idea of school opening or not, or a hybrid, we just want the board to be in the best position it can be. And we also want to try to plan and not have to come in October. We need more, create some instability in the tax rate. That's our overall goal.
Well, thank you, Jack. And I'm glad we're going to be able to have those meetings, because we definitely want to get as good a picture as we can of what the budget's looking like. And I know it's challenging. So in terms of other meetings, for July, all we have scheduled at this point is our monthly meeting and our executive committee meeting. However, I just wanted to let people know that one of the things that's really been on hold due to COVID-19 emergency has been our communications and policy work, and we are planning to reconvene that work in August with a meeting, and we'll be working with Karen Fisher Anderson on some of that policy work that we talked about a little bit earlier. So we're definitely looking forward to that. So it's not on the calendar, but it's definitely on our radar. Okay, anything else on the calendar?
Jenny, it's Liza.
Liza, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just to say that I would like to schedule a city and community relations committee meeting in July or August, depending on people's availability.
Liza, I'd be available.
Thanks, Dave. And I don't know if it makes more sense to wait until after the communications committee meeting, or we feel like we've got enough to work with in July. I could go either way.
You know, July's fine. I think there's plenty that we can talk about.
So we don't have to set a date tonight, but just wanted to say that I think we're ready to jump back into that.
Thanks, Liza.
You bet.
I wonder if Jenny dropped off the call.
I was going to say, did we lose Jenny? Jenny, are you there? We'll give her a minute to get back on.
Yeah.
Not really sure that we have much else more to cover. No, that was the last thing. That was the last thing on the agenda.
Yes.
Jeff, you have public comment.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much, Lyndon. I will get that. As a matter of fact, I had written that down even earlier. So, so Jenny's not back, so I will, I guess I'll step in here and say that this is a point for public comment on any topic. Does not have to be on the agenda. And please, as per our policy, limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Is there anybody waiting for public comment?
So I'll go down the list. Let me see if I see anybody. There's Elizabeth Young, Jim, Josh. There is somebody that is on as just a K. That's all I see. Anybody? And then I'll skip the one that's K. If they chime in, I'll let you know.
Yes, good evening. I'll be very brief. It's been a long night. First of all, I did want to thank Superintendent Bass and Principal Reardon and everyone else who's been working so hard on being able to have a graduation for the class of 2020. I think it means a lot, and it's really fantastic. You've worked so hard. I also wanted an update board, and I actually was very surprised that it was not on the agenda regarding next steps with the report, and knowing that the Supreme Court last week overturned the district's or the overall issue regarding internal practices, and that has been what the board has continued to use against the release of the Juna Perkins report. So what are the next steps based on that?
Do you want me to answer, Jim?
Yeah, Frank, go ahead.
Sure. So thank you, Kate, for bringing that up. Yes, we did have a meeting this morning, actually, this afternoon, to talk about that. And you're absolutely correct. The Supreme Court has reversed what has been law for quite some time in terms of what's in the public domain. I see Jenny's back now, and she can add to this. But, you know, bottom line is there's more of a balancing test that is now in play. So our task before us is to look at the document and to make our best efforts in terms of how do we balance that test in terms of what's domain and what's not. Obviously, there are still things that have to be redacted, and we are in the process of doing that. We hope to have that process done sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, at which time we will send that up to Judge Tucker, because that's where the case first resided, and then he'll have to adjudicate on our redaction and if there is further work to do. And I believe that our attorney is already in touch with the other attorney in that case. So again, thank you for bringing that up, Kate, but we are in the process of responding to that as of today. Jenny, if you want to add.
When you say, I just have a further question of that. When you say respond, do you mean will the district's attorneys continue to fight the release of the report? Or are you looking at proactively releasing it with redactions to protect the kids? We know that internal process. So can you clarify what you mean?
The latter. It's Kate, it's the latter. We are proactively responding to the decision by the Supreme Court decision, and therefore it affects all cases in the state of New Hampshire, and so we're responsive to that. And so we are taking this very proactive. And it's not quite as simple as just simply saying all students are protected and any other personnel issue is not. There is a balancing test that has to be employed, and obviously we will make sure that we do that to the best of our ability. And I'm glad in a way that the judge still has jurisdiction over this, because we'll be in a position of, for his final adjudication, if you will, to determine if we have responded appropriately to what the Supreme Court has said. And we've done a good balancing test of what's appropriate for the public and what's not.
Thank you.
So sorry I dropped off. I assume we're in the public comment.
Yes.
Yes,
Section of the
Jenny.
meeting.
Yeah, we're in the public comment. So Jack, where are we as far as the
So
going down your list?
I see a Susan on there. They could comment, they can identify themselves. I don't see anybody else. Liza, I show your hand still up. Is that, did you want to make a comment, or is that an old hand?
That's an old hand. Thanks for asking.
No problem.
Okay, Jenny, back to
you. Okay, well, thank you. And again, sorry I dropped off, but I think that we are now ready to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion, we adjourn.
So Chuck has made a motion to adjourn, and
Barb will second it.
And seconded by Barb, and all in favor say aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned. Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.